5, 4,
3,
10.
Uno.
You hear that? That is the sound of change. Ooh. Actually, just a nice hot cup of coffee. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Latino Slant, a special elections edition. It is election day coming up as of today in 2 days. Incredible. And what I wanted to do is kind of round out our coverage over the last several months. And we have that playlist on the channel as far as the Latino vote in the United States and how things have changed. And whether you're paying attention or not, in a huge wave of Latinos who were staunch Democrats have gone to the other side. It's just now a fact. Now, how much of that fact will translate into votes and in different cities, uh, regions, and states? That's left to be seen. So I thought it'd be great to discuss this, to have you guys in the chat. We're going to come up with a poll question. What I would love for you guys to do right now is share the link. We put it out on Twitter. Let people know we're here because there's not many channels that are built for talking about MCU and Latino music and then politics. That's us. We can do it all. So please get the word out there. Also, too, if you want to support the channel directly, I pinned it in the video box, the chat box is our PayPal. And that would be fantastic if you could do that. And I want to just say hello to the early comers, Sander, Miguel Farah. Jane is here. Hello, Jane. Hello, Jane. I know. She's going to join us in a second. Miguel Gonzalez and the great Mexican Iron Man, who not only is what's going on here? There we go. I can't wait to see what this channel has to say about voting in politics, Latino candidates. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I will not take away your privileges there. And Ari's here. Hello, Ari. Great to see you here. And to people that are just lurking while working, we appreciate you as well. Okay. So if you type in the words Latino vote in YouTube as a search, you will see video after video after video of coverage saying that Latinos have moved to the right, whether it's right of center, or Trump right, whatever that is, they have gone away from the party of the Democrats. And this incredible article that came out from the Atlantic, why Democrats are losing Hispanic voters. It's not a question. This is a statement. And pretty well done article. It touches on a lot of things. It's by Tim Alberta. And what I wanted to do is break this down with you guys and we could talk about it. But I wanted to do it with a buddy, with a very smart lady, and whose channel I really enjoy. So let's welcome Jayne Theory. Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Mhm. Well, it's that time of the year where people go nuts.
Yeah. Right before the holidays.
Right before
It gets interesting.
that's gonna be interesting. Thanksgiving dinner discussion, right?
Yeah. Hopefully not as bad as before, but
What are your initial thoughts, just as far as what I've said, and then me and you have both read this article. What are your initial thoughts as far as the Latino vote of 2022?
yeah.
Uh, is it a mass exodus? What are your thoughts?
I think Democrats initially really misunderstood, and Republicans too for that matter, what the Latino vote would actually mean.
Hmm.
And I think they misunderstand this with respect to a lot of populations. They just make assumptions about, oh, well, these are quote unquote people of color. So they're
Mm,
automatically going to vote with Democrats. So you end up in that same situation that, as a Black person, I've seen time and time again, where the Democrats underestimate the value of actually reaching out to the community and asking questions and trying to see what they need and what they want, and
mm,
how they can provide and serve the community. At the same time, sometimes Republicans will look the other way or just write it off. What I'm seeing are more and more people making decisions that they're not going to be taken for granted, and that they are going to take control of their vote and be very careful and particular about who they give it to. And it's not going to be
mm,
necessarily on party lines or what you did before, but what you have the potential to do in the future. And that's
mm-hmm.
something that politicians need to pay attention to, but they're still sort of, I think, in shock and surprised that they're not getting an automatic pat on the back and an automatic vote just because the people they assumed would vote for them based on skin color or whatever uh, are making other decisions.
Sure, sure. That's great. In one of the videos that I did recently, I and this is from a poll, recent poll, national poll, whatever they did, where it was the top issues facing Latinos, what they care about,
Mhm.
and the top six issues had nothing to do with any cultural war issues.
Right, right. The very
Shocker.
thing they try to tie you to is identity politics. Like, people have real
Mhm.
issues,
Yeah,
real day-to-day
and it
concerns.
seems they're doubling down
Mhm.
on that. When I say they, when I mean Democratic um, politicians, their
Right.
ads, their supporters, and maybe your Democratic friends you might see on social media, as far as you don't vote Democrat, you're gonna die.
Right.
You'll lose all your rights. Um, yeah, what's your thought on that?
That's what they do, though. They'll tell you it's funny. You're either an ally or an enemy, right?
Hey, you sound like Namor in Wakanda Forever. You know, we got on a little pre-show and we were actually talking about Namor and the problems with Wakanda Forever, and we weren't talking about the politics yet. But yeah, no, for real, for real. Those top issues, economy,
Mhm.
shocker, right?
Jobs, gasoline.
I mean, 80% economy, then security, then
Yeah,
um, uh, education. You
right.
know, I mean, we don't even talk about that. That the Latino people love their kids to be educated.
Mhm. I think politicians don't want to necessarily address those
Mm,
topics
mhm,
because they may be topics that they can't really benefit from,
mhm,
in the sense that they tend not to be as divisive. If you're talking about the economy, everybody wants more jobs. If you're talking about education, people want better teachers, and better textbooks and better material, better educated kids.
mhm.
If you're talking about infrastructure, things like that, these are things that they actually have to come to the table with ideas and
Yeah,
solutions versus just talking points and blaming the other side and calling everybody a Nazi or a communist or whatever. They have to
a
actually talk
fascist.
about issues,
Yeah,
facts, yeah, things
I
they
mean,
can be judged by as
yeah.
well.
What's trending and in fashion right now is just to say, if it's not in the line with you, you're a fascist.
Yeah,
And I'm like, do you know what fascism really is?
they have no idea.
Have you experienced that on any level? But listen. these are all great ideas and great talks. And yeah, full disclaimer, guys. Jane is a black woman.
Yeah.
I'm a Chicano. So we got a couple of check boxes here, and whether we say who we're voting for or what party, I've always been the belief it's like whatever my leanings are, it's really no one's business.
Mhm.
Just like anything in my house. How I conduct and live my life in my house, it's really no one's business. It's like, but anyways. Um, okay, well, why don't we bring this article up? I
Okay.
think it's time. And again, everyone, thank you, early birds, for being here. Share the link, let people know that we're here. And Mexican Iron Man says, "What is this thing called a Chicano? I thought Chicanos were endangered species." Uh, we are. We are. We are. Oh my God, Jane's not a wasp. How dare she have an opinion?
How dare I?
How dare I? Okay, here we go from the Atlantic. Why Democrats are losing Hispanic voters. The left
Mhm.
has alienated America's fastest growing group of voters just when they were supposed to give the party a foolproof majority.
Yeah. That's
Mhm,
their problem too, assuming that they are entitled to voters.
mhm.
Like, there should never, in my opinion, there shouldn't even be a thing as there shouldn't be such a thing as a base. There's no base. You have individual Americans, you have individual voters, and you, as someone who wants to be their representative, should be appealing to them as individuals.
And we got a PayPal super chat,
Ooh.
and that's even just really really a big deal for any channel, like to get that money directly from Ari Bavel. $20 for Paulie to help spread the word. Vote. Yeah, absolutely. Get educated and vote,
Yeah.
guys. Really, really, whatever municipality you're in, city, state, region, and that's. Thank you so much. Here, let's play a little. Let's play a little Mexican Iron Man for you. Gracias. That's another thing that I find, just to, another really strange point is that, like, oh, they're telling you how to control your body, or you're taking away your rights. It's like, well, were elected by us.
Right.
So the people have spoken. And if you don't like it, you can go move to another state, or I don't know what, or you can go vote.
Right. Yeah.
Ándale, ándale. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Have you ever met someone who's watching their life's work, their very legacy, fall apart in front of their eyes? I'm talking to two of them right now. Oh, and Jane, anytime you want to chime in, please just
Okay,
say hey.
sure.
Yeah. Earl and May Rose Wilcox spent the morning juggling plates of chorizo and shouting orders in Spanish toward the kitchen behind them. Now they're catching their breath at a corner booth in El Portal, the South Mexican restaurant they've run for 2 decades. Full disclosure also, me and my family, we're from South Phoenix. Yay! So I was like, really, like, wow, I know that restaurant. This is really interesting. They point out that members of their family depicted in a mural on a nearby wall, retracing the mission that brought them to this place and wondering aloud how it all went wrong. Oh my God. Excuse me. And this is the writer speaking. I came to Arizona looking to answer the question of why. Over the past few years, so many Hispanics have fled the Democratic Party. This exodus is evident across numerous counties, congressional districts, and battleground states. But the stakes seem highest in Arizona, where Republicans are promoting a slate of extremist candidates and counting on Hispanic voters to help them in office.
That's the problem. That's one of the problems.
Mm,
Um, Labeling
mm,
these candidates as extremists.
mhm,
People are sick of that. They can't imagine that some of these views that
mhm,
conservatives hold aren't extreme. They're only extreme from their perspective. But from the perspective of the conservative people, they're not that extreme at all. They're mainstream, they're normal, they're everyday, they're what they grew up with. And they don't want to recognize that because they've
Uh-huh.
started to associate quote unquote extreme views or conservative views or views that they disagree with white people. And so it's like if you see any other
Mhm.
people who share those views, they are just dumbstruck. Like, how could this be? Well, because a lot of people have conservative values, regardless of color.
Well, yeah, right. So there's two things there. What you just said. There's either that you are white supremacist thinking,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And obviously, right, because that's the only
The only,
solution that they have, right?
yeah.
Oh, well, then you're no, you're blind. You're a white supremacist. They've gotten to you. Um, or that their math doesn't calculate. They like, I was watching another video where this lady who's going across the country, Latina,
Hmm.
chronicling a lot of stuff, and she was hanging out with Mayra Flores, and she couldn't she couldn't understand how can immigrants be against a secure border when when immigrants are fleeing from communism, and yet they're anti-communist, and it's
Hmm.
like, well, you know that's a math that you in your head, it's like you can't it's like you've already made the equation, you've already answered it without talking to them. Do you understand
Yeah.
what am I
Hmm.
making myself clear, Jane?
Yeah. And
Hmm.
I think too, sometimes they use some of those talking points, I think, as red herrings.
Hmm.
Because even the border conversation has, I felt like it's just been a ball. The Democrats, establishment
Hmm.
Democrats and Republicans have just been using,
Hmm.
knowing full well that we have a border and we've been funding it forever.
Hmm.
Like, that was never an issue. Now, do we need
Hmm.
better, um, administration of that border? Do we need more officers, better equipment, technology, more courts to process people who are coming through? Absolutely, it could be more efficient. But this
I
whole
actually,
idea, like, we don't have
yeah.
a border, like, that's nonsense.
Yeah, I
Mm,
actually disagree with you, Jane. Shocker,
really?
right? But
Yeah,
that we can disagree and have a talk.
yeah,
I actually think that that it's just overtaxed. The system's there. I mean, it's there. What I mean by just what you said
mhm,
is that it's all there. It's just overtaxed. From personnel to technology,
mhm.
it's you know it's just
But
overrun.
it doesn't have to be. It's like Congress
No,
controls the
it doesn't. It
resources.
doesn't. Right. Um, there's another point that you said I wanted to reply to. Yeah, yeah. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. But let's see. God, what was that point? And it was like an amazing point I was gonna make. All right. This is fun. This is fun. I hope you guys are having a good time. We'll get to some of your comments in a minute. We're here with Jayne Theory. We have her, follow her. We have all her links in the video description. Um, what I found is Earl and Mary Rose, a couple in their mid 70s and the twin bosses of a Phoenix political machine, reckoning with the same awful conclusion that I've heard from so many Hispanics, both here and around the country. The party doesn't care about us. Mary Rose tells me they pretend to care every 2 years.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Oh, yeah, and that I agree with, and just kind of like for my own, just so you guys know, anyone watching this, I think both parties are to blame. Like both parties do this
Mhm.
stuff, and if the Republicans can figure out the cultural sensitivities, the importance, and the diversity within the Latino vote, uh, they could sit pretty for a while because the Democrats have totally, like you said, taken. That's what this article is about. The Democrats have totally taken the Latino vote for granted. Um,
But this is one of those issues I feel like
mhm,
wouldn't be an issue
mhm.
except for them making it one, because it's a management issue. And there's no reason why Democrats and Republicans in Congress couldn't manage the immigration department. Like, there's no reason why they
Mhm.
can't handle how to process the people who are coming or
Mhm.
applying for whatever
Mhm.
visas or what have you. They're choosing not to, perhaps,
They're
because
choosing
then they
not to.
can use it to get on TV and scare people one way or the other.
It's the same thing with what happened with abortion. Okay, and
Yes.
my
Yeah.
thought came back to me because we're talking about, and I want to be fair, to both parties, and also to point at that under the Obama administration, more people were heavily deported than ever before. In
Mhm.
fact, Latino advocacy groups for immigrants' rights named him the deporter in chief.
Mhm.
So the porter in charge, or the chief deporter, I forgot what the title was.
Yeah.
That was Obama.
Well, and that's the
Okay.
thing too is
Mhm.
the presidents don't have significant control over that. It's Congress. They're the ones who are controlling
Mhm.
funding. So
Well,
they're the
right.
ones who can cut departments or expand them. Um, they're the ones who write the laws that the presidents have to enforce. So it's like the president can only do so much within the construct that
Mhm.
Congress puts in place. But they don't want to ever talk about their individual responsibility in it. It's the president's fault. So it's either going to be Obama or Clinton or Trump or whoever,
Mhm.
instead of looking at what they are doing and what they could be doing to fix it. That's one of the things I liked about what Trump had to say. When
Mm.
people were critical of how he was handling the border, he told them, well, change the laws then.
Mm.
I don't write the law, I just enforce it.
I mean, we can have a whole discussion on Trump, and in his policies and his personality, but um, I've come around as far as getting past the man
Hmm.
and looking at his policies and
Yeah.
what he was trying, what he was really trying to do, and then I'm looking at what Biden and his policies are really trying to do. It's all there on paper, guys.
I don't think Biden knows what a policy is anymore. I'm just gonna
We're-
be
oh, come on, man. That's his policy.
that's it.
Um, let- when Earl and Mary Rose bought El Portal in 1999 in the working class barrio of Grand Park, they didn't know much about running a kitchen. Earl had been one of the few Hispanic lawmakers in the state legislature. Mary Rose broke barriers twice, the first Hispanic woman ever elected to the city council and the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. But the Wilcoxes envisioned the cramped, dusky
Mhm.
dusky dining room of El Portal as more than a place for cheap tacos and tequila. It would be a de facto headquarters for the city's Hispanic Democrats. But there weren't many of them. But Earl and Mary Rose knew that it was about to change. The Hispanic population was just beginning to boom, and the potential of these voters to tip elections towards Democrats nationally, both particularly in states like Arizona, was becoming more apparent with every campaign. Hispanics are not a monolith, even if the political class treated them as such. The Wilcoxes wanted to harness the political promise of their community. What they didn't want was to be taken advantage of. They felt that Democrats were prone to patronizing Hispanics, offering noble rhetoric, but never a seat at the table. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, it's not good, but that's that is good. Let me there's just some good comments building up. I just
Mhm.
want to just let me see. And some people saying hi. Buenos dias a todos. Buenos dias. Ray J's world. There's the misconception that Latinos support undocumented immigration. Truth is, they don't. What? That's like bad words. It's like bad words on the left.
Um, I don't think I don't think undocumented immigration is even a thing.
Mm.
Like, we have refugee laws.
We have laws. We're actually, it kills people to hear that, but we're actually have laws and are very humane to undocumented people.
Because of how we started as a country. That's what makes us different. When people start comparing us to other countries that are much more strict when it comes to their borders, I think they're forgetting our own origin and how this was an experiment. And that's why we allow so many more people than other countries tend to.
Yeah.
And it's not that there's no documentation required. It's just different documentations for the different ways you can come in. So you choose whichever way you're trying to get in and you provide whatever's required.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. The Seaman, don't forget respecting family and faith. Well, that's going to be in
Yes.
this. That's in this article.
That's a biggie. That's a
That
biggie because anytime they talk about faith and family, they talk about it as if the things we value are exclusively white supremacist in origin, which is just so disrespectful um to families and Christians and in particular, which make up a
Catholics,
good percentage of the population that they're trying to get votes
mhm.
from, but they're so hypercritical of.
Catholics, Christians, evangelicals,
Mhm.
are a majority of religions in the Latino culture, if I can be so bold to say that.
It's true.
It's just it's true. There is a tunneling back of different types of spirituality,
Mhm.
but that does not make up a super majority of voters. Um, so yeah, there's so much with this one, see, man, because family and faith are just bedrocks. They're
Yeah.
bedrock. And yeah,
And
yeah.
when you go out there and ridicule people for having those values, and then you
Mhm.
want their vote, they're not gonna hear you out. I mean, at that point, you're gonna lose a lot of people just on that alone.
Mike has bad knees. I'm sorry, Mike.
Like
Yeah, family and faith are a huge part of the culture, and it affects the way people vote.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was watching what's his name? The economist, real estate guy, Patrick Bet David, whatever his name is. Iranian immigrant, like, success story. I love his channel, Valuetainment. And
Mm.
the great discussion they were having, and he just basically said, it comes down to, let's say you're a single mom with two kids,
Mhm.
and there's a new country starting up, and they want you to come in. What's the first thing you're gonna ask? Uh, Economic opportunity and
Mhm.
safety.
Mhm.
And safety. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Um, I live on a farm that's close to town. That's 2 hours away from Aguascalientes. Visitors in Mexico. I didn't know that. Very cool. Órale. We got some great people in the chat. Wex Wuto,
Mhm.
Kitty Bear, come on, man. Is Oh my God.
Oh my god.
That's funny. And our brother, Darth Plato, is a member of the channel. Anyone remember the Reform Party in the 90s? The R's and the Dems were unified and taking them down. That third party option, man, that viable third party option.
I think
Yeah.
it's coming. You're seeing a lot of people start to identify as libertarian or
Mm-hmm.
independent,
Mm-hmm.
because they're getting sick of that back and forth
Mm-hmm.
binary perspective that it seems like the top of the parties are constantly trying to divide people into. And people are complex. People have different kinds of views. You
Mm-hmm.
may be more liberal in certain areas and more conservative in others. But if you align yourself with a party, it's almost like they force you to not only identify just with their definition of what that means, but they force you to choose in every respect,
Mm-hmm.
one side or the other. And your average person isn't doing all of that. They're going to hold to their values and what's important to them, and they're getting sick of the fake conflict.
Mm.
I know I am. I think the only reason why I'm still in the party right now is because I may run for office someday.
Whoa,
But
what?
for
What?
that,
Wait. Breaking news.
yeah.
Breaking.
Mm.
Jayne Theory had Jayne Theory has something to say.
Not today,
Damn it.
but one day.
One day what?
I may run for office.
Yeah, you heard it
Yeah.
here, the Latino
The
slander, boy.
only the only reason why I'm sticking with it, otherwise I'd be a libertarian,
Mm, mm,
hands down.
right. Um, we have a super chat, and it's super duper for you, Mexican
Oh.
Iron Man, member of the channel, $10, $9.99. Oh my God, Jane is on fire. Biden doesn't know what policy is. I think you two should run for office. Hashtag winning ticket. Nice. Thanks, Mike.
Thank y'all.
I mean, I guess you knew that it's in her wheelhouse there. It's in your is it on your vision board?
It is. It is. But I think everybody I mean, that's an option for anybody in your community. Think about
Mm,
running for office, especially if you have a lot of complaints about your elected
yeah.
officials. At some point, you have to just throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, maybe I should stop complaining to my neighbors. Oh boy. Oh boy. This is for Mexican Iron Man. And rumor has it this is Mexican Iron Man. Mike, is that you? It's not Mike. Mike is a very good looking man. And not to say our Theo who just screamed wasn't, but that's not Mike. All right, let's get back to it. The Wilcoxes wanted to harness the political promise of their community. They didn't want to be taken advantage of. They
Mhm.
felt that Democrats were prone to patronizing. Oh, wait, I read this. Let's just go on. The Wilcoxes staged protests, hosted candidate events, ran voter registration drives, transported voters to the polls. I mean, these guys were in the
Mhm.
trenches, and I admired that.
Yeah.
I really, just what you said. These are, citizens, patriots, exercising their American rights. This, yeah, all props to the Wilcoxes.
Mhm.
Yet the next 2 decades brought little but defeat, losing 2 battles over comprehensive immigration reform, the signing of SB 1070, the Arizona's law codifying racial profiling, perpetual conflicts with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who terrorized Hispanic neighborhoods with roundups and targeted his political opponents. He once indicted Mary Rose. She and Earl sued him and the county for violating their civil rights, resulting in a $975,000 settlement. Wow. And then there was Donald Trump's ascension to the presidency. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So there you go. And their battles that they've had.
But
And
see,
here,
it sounds like
mhm,
they're disappointed because these are local issues, right?
uh-huh.
So it seems
State
like
issues, right? Right.
yeah, state issues.
Arizona state
So
issues, right?
they lost they didn't have the majority support, you
Hmm.
know? I mean, that happens sometimes.
Yeah, and like they said, it happened in those 2 decades where it's like, that was that's more of a, like you said, political numbers,
Mhm.
because the Latino vote just wasn't there uh, on the level that it is now. Um,
And the other
so,
thing that's notable is that when they
mhm,
thought their civil rights were being violated, they sued in the courts and they won. So you also have
mhm,
the courts
mhm.
as an option for dealing with a lot of these issues that have to do with civil rights, taking it out of the local sphere.
Yeah,
So that's an option too that they exercised and were successful
absolutely, absolutely. And great points you just made up. You just brought, and you didn't make up, that you brought up.
with.
You're absolutely right, because here in them trying to exercise their rights and fighting it, against these political, things that were going on, the bill, uh, then to be attacked by the sheriff, they're like, you know what, that's not right.
Mhm.
I can take you to court, and they won.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, yeah. And there they are. There's a couple. Uh, God, he like looks like one of my older uncles. It is one of my older uncles. Kidding. And there's El Portal and South Phoenix, man. That's where both my parents are from. I mean, I was just there a few weeks ago. Just there a few weeks ago. Finally, in 2020, a breakthrough. Joe Biden didn't just win the election; he won Arizona. Only the second time since Harry Truman's administration that a Democrat had carried the state. Given Biden's winning margin, 0.3% percentage point, and the unprecedented turnout of Hispanic voters, there could be no disputing who had delivered Arizona to the president elect. The state Hispanics population has tripled since 1990, but Republicans had spent those years doubling down on the harsh policing, and immigration policies that appealed to their white conservative base.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Well, that's just the Atlantic being the Atlantic.
But
What are your
that's
thoughts
the
on that?
kind of language that turns people off. Like, they just don't get it.
hmm What don't they get?
That you can talk about these issues without being inflammatory, without being dramatic about
hmm
everything, without describing everything as some sort of extreme. If
hmm
there are specific issues, okay, let's just take local policing. If there are issues with policing, there are a couple ways you can address it. You don't have
Right.
to just demonize the entire institution. You could focus on getting more people from those communities involved in the department. You can
hmm
file lawsuits when rights are violated. You can get more people involved in the legal system, make more lawyers, more judges, things like that, to
hmm
address it from all different facets instead of just, oh, we're a victim and it's white supremacy and all of this stuff. Like, nobody wants to hear that. That just, to me at least, sounds like excuses.
All right. Earl and Mary Rose had spent decades waiting for the GOP's bill to come due. On election night 2020, they toasted to a new era. Wow.
A new era.
New era.
Because not only are people a monolith, they're also static.
What do you mean by that?
They assume people don't change. So once they win, they
Mm.
feel like they don't have to do anything anymore to continue to
Mm.
earn the vote and earn support. It's like, okay, we got them. They're in the bag. We can move on. And that's not how it works. That's not how any politician or any political organization should
Mhm.
view its constituency.
Great point. Great point. Um, over 30 people in the chat. People are showing up. Thank you so much. Share the link on Twitter. Let people know we're here. We're having a great discussion with Jayne Theory on the Latino vote. But really, it's like this affects everyone, every American. And we're talking about the Latino vote here in the US,
Mhm.
not any other country. So this is a great discussion we're having. And Jayne, you're making me look very smart for bringing that up. Hello to again to all the great people in the chat. Uh, we're glad you're here. Okay, let's read on. And then the strangest thing happened. People
Mm,
started coming into El Portal to vent their frustrations
mm.
and unload their grievances against the Democratic Party.
Ah.
Our community, we may not be educated at the highest levels, but we have a lot of street smarts. We know when people are bullshitting us, Earl tells me, motioning to
Exactly.
the people sitting around us. You know what they say to Democrats now? Es pura cábula. Bunch of bullshit.
Yeah,
All right.
not
All
shocked
right.
at all.
Mm. Over the past few years, Hispanics have begun abandoning the Democratic Party, defying generations of political patterns and causing various degrees of panic on the left. In 2018 midterm elections, when the Democrats regained control of the U.S. House of Representatives, they won the Hispanic vote by 40% nationally. In 2020, an estimated 33 points against Trump himself,
Mm.
though the party's margin against GOP candidates shrank to 27 points. This summer, numerous polls show Hispanics splitting in a statistical tie between the two parties. Even
Mm.
if such findings, go ahead, you want to say something?
No, I think that's a good thing. I've long believed that parties should not have or feel that they have a monopoly on any one group of people. Like it, and that's not just um, because I think that the parties need it, but I think specifically each of these communities need to have a foothold in both camps, to be at the table in
Mhm.
both parties in order to make sure that you're not taken for granted. to make sure that you're not ignored, because that's what they tend to do if you end up in one side, like all your eggs in one basket.
Even if such findings are exaggerated, several recent surveys have shown Democrats reestablishing an advantage among these voters. It's evident which ones. It's evident that Republicans are poised next week,
Hmm.
at the time of this video, in 2 days, to
Hmm.
win big in their share of Hispanics in the modern era.
Yeah.
Whether this translates into outright GOP victories is harder to predict, given the party's continued hemorrhaging of white suburban voters. Indeed, this is what makes the implications of a Hispanic partisan realignment so profound.
Hmm.
At a moment when Democrats have begun to dominate the affluent, college-educated vote for decades that formed the cornerstone of the Republican coalition, perhaps the only thing that can keep the GOP conservative is an infusion of support from the very middle and working class Hispanics who were, at this moment in history, supposed to deliver Democrats a foolproof majority. Okay, I got two things with that.
Hmm.
Affluent, college educated Latinos, Democrats, cornerstone, they're, those are a minority
Hmm.
in any group, whether that's a good thing or bad thing. That's a different argument. Middle and working class are the majority, period.
Hmm.
Super majority, in fact. So that's who you need to be paying attention to, as well as the independent swing vote. Did you have anything to add to
No,
that?
I think that that just it reflects very much their thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how they see people, as who they can put into a box. And so you have the affluent college educated vote, you have the working class vote, and then they subdivide it into the Hispanic vote and the black vote and this and that. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's trying to create a monolith of these groups to make it easier for them to sell their message with as little actual effort as possible. Because that's what it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
If they look at people in those ways, those very simplistic ways, and that reductionist way, then they don't have to see you as an individual person, understanding that you can have different views that they even disagree with. Um, and that's one of the that's one of the problems I have with politics today. That
Mm.
they just refuse to do the work of getting out on the ground and getting to know people, instead of just writing this group off, or okay, this group we have already and all of that. Like, and I blame us for the most part. I blame the people because
Mm-hmm.
we allow them to get away with this type of
Well,
language.
right. There's part of like allowing that because we actually are the part of that majority where we're busy living our lives and working and taking care of our families. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we got that person in that want that reflects my views, or
Mhm.
I'm gonna back this guy, and then we find out, he's coming up on fraud charges.
Yeah, exactly. We have to continue to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And the other
Hmm.
thing too is, um, sometimes they don't understand how groups overlap. So, like,
Hmm.
for Democrats, they've had this weird obsession for years with looking at working class Americans
Mm.
and having that be synonymous with white.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Okay,
I think
yeah,
so,
and,
the way
and,
they
and
talk about it.
right. Okay, I see what you're saying. I agree. And then seeing the poor as the victims,
Mhm.
just because you're, as far as, and poor as far as like you're not living on the streets, you're just,
Right.
barely paycheck to paycheck,
Mhm.
which is a lot of people, as victims.
Yeah.
Interesting. And not white.
Right. Yes. Which is insane.
Right.
Which is really crazy.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
allows them to ignore, or at least be shocked by, I guess, the concerns of working class Hispanics, for example,
Hmm.
because your concerns may be shared with other working class people of other ethnic groups. and they're
Yeah.
just taken aback because that's not supposed to be the box you're in. It's just weird.
It's very weird. It's always weird, when you're talking politics to someone, and the first thing they'll bring up, you know, to me is immigration. I'm like,
Mhm.
when do I ever talk about immigration?
Yeah. Why are you the go-to for immigration?
Well, like, okay, was it, because of the color of my skin or last name or, and it's not that I don't care. Obviously don't want anyone to be, dehumanized.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but this is not on the top of my list, as far as,
Yeah. I get the same
so
thing about inner city crime. I'm like, I've never even lived near an inner city. I have no idea
right.
other than what I read.
City crime. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, we're having a great discussion. I think we need a poll question.
Mm.
Uh, I think we need a poll question, and I had asked Mexican Iron Man. I think. What do you think, Jane? Like, is it just basically is the how much is the Latino vote going to go to the left, to the right? Is this going to be a sweeping thing?
I think
Something
it's
there.
I think it's gonna be fairly evenly split, which is something I predicted a long time ago. I think Democrats should have seen the writing on the wall if they
Mhm,
understood the population well enough, especially like someone mentioned before,
mhm,
values, family, faith, things like that, economic concerns, education concerns. If you look at people in that and from that framework, instead of trying to stereotype them, then you would know that the Hispanic population is probably going to be split between the two parties fairly evenly. And I think that's something that will be consistent.
Well, we have our question created by our buddy. Okay, let me see. And I'm going to put it up right now. So give me a second. There's anything else you wanted to say, Jane?
No, I'll just sort of re-emphasize how important I think that is, that it keeps the parties on their toes. It keeps them from getting too comfortable. Um, if if the constituency that they have to deal with, that they have no choice but to deal with and answer to, um, are the groups that make it difficult for them to see as a monolith because they're in both parties. As much as I can't stand both parties at this point, that's sort of where I am. Um, as long as we have that kind of political establishment,
Mm-hmm.
you need both holding these people accountable. And also I think too, the people need to understand that we're not each other's enemy. It really should be the people on one side
Mm-hmm.
and the politicians on the other. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that.
Okay, a couple great points, Jane. We're here with Jayne Theory. Oh my God, making the Latino slant look like $1,000,000. Two things. The poll is up.
Mm.
The poll is up. Here it is. Here it is. Here's the question. Which party better stands for the values and policies that Hispanics value? Democrat, Republican, neither.
Ooh.
It's up. Yeah. Ooh, people are voting. And thank you, Mexican Iron Man, for helping me out with that. And the second thing is we have some wonderful people in the chat. Fletcher Williams, Colonizer Jeebus,
Oh, that's a Jeepus.
hilarious. Paulie's new Ice channel. Oh, dude, you're gonna get me in so much trouble
That's
with my
funny.
lefty Chicano friends. Oh my God, I'm not gonna hear the end of it. But you know what? I don't care. They don't pay my bills. They don't take. That's another thing is that like I was part of the, it was kind of Jane was kind of shocked when I tell her I was like, really part of the left for so many decades, and you know, I was always broke. Because I was always, doing this cause and that cause, and it's like I wasn't taking care of my own, living situation. It's just like, man, I gotta back off and you know take care of my business. But anyways, yeah, yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Professor Logos is here. The Democrats lost my Hispanic family's vote decades ago. We've been Republicans for generations.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
My
Yeah,
family's
we
gone back and forth for ever,
mhm,
practically.
mhm. Well, the reality is in our household we're kind of evenly split on a lot of different issues, you know. Uh and the thing is that both parties and what it's like, but anyways, that's the Rogue Attraction is here. Hello, Rogue. Good to have you.
Hey, Rogue.
Dragon Bricks hashtag. Shouldn't it be hashtag Dragon Bricks? El perro de la tumo. Uh, I pay you with love and respect, Slant. Hey, thank you. Gracias. Florida would welcome Paulie. Now, it's not going to happen.
In Florida.
Love you guys in Florida, but I'm staying here and fighting the good fight in my hometown, Los Angeles. But we need to go. I need to go and visit a Rogue Attraction with Tom and hang out. Yeah, Polly, come be with the rest of us Cubans. Oh God, I love Cubans. I love there's so many things I love about the Cuban culture.
Mhm.
The amazing legacy of their musicians, their poetry, and of course their food
Oh,
and
yeah.
women. Did I say that? The fight is lost. Hey,
The fight is
listen. I can't go nowhere. I got both parents are here, and I have my working actor girlfriend here. Okay, let's get back to this. Well, and great to see all our friends in the chat. Make sure you guys share the link, hit the like, do the poll, do the poll. Wait a minute, that sound right? Sounded awful. Uh, the poll right now stands at 4% Democratic, Republican 67%, neither 28%.
Mm.
So there's always that contingency there. Oh, Lord Thoth is here. He's a member of the channel. What's up, Lord?
Hey.
Oh God. Okay, all right, let's go on. Given the ferocity of the criticisms Earl relays to me from his patrons, Democrats are insufficiently patriotic.
Mm.
They are elitist in their cultural sensibilities, and they are oblivious to the struggles and priorities of working people.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that last part. I
I asked the
personally
office.
never liked the virtue signaling of patriotism. Like all of them having the lapel pin, but they don't actually do anything.
You talking about like on the right or on the left?
Both,
Both. Right.
honestly. It's like
Well,
they cling to the flag, but they're not actually doing things that improve the country. We're still behind the rest of the Western world in so many areas. So if you love the country, then
mhm.
why don't your actions reflect that?
I think that's a good point. I think patriotism can be manifested and practiced in various ways, and it should be. And you know, we sh- there should be an allegiance, obviously, to an American identity, but within that American identity, it's very diverse and complex, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. That's the thing with this free society that we're in. We're not just black, Mexican,
Yeah.
white. We're so many things. So yeah. Patriotism. I used to have a hard time uh, with that, and no longer. Uh, but just for those reasons, because I was always kind of turned off by the flag wavers, and yet they, weren't walking the walk. Uh,
Mhm.
so okay,
That's my
good point.
issue.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Um, I asked the obvious question: how durable is his party's hold on the Hispanic vote? He thinks for a moment. There's a professor from Arizona State. He tells me, who comes by often? Of course, the professor, the academia. One
Mhm.
recent morning, after overhearing some of Earl's regulars sounding off on the Democratic Party over breakfast, the professor pulled him aside. He could sense that Earl was anxious and told him not to worry. Not to worry. Us educated people, we have all the answers. Whatever gains the GOP was making were bound to be temporary. Hispanics,
Oh,
the professor told him, would never abandon the Democratic Party.
temporary?
Hmm. I mean, not according to Professor Logos.
Mm.
They've been now Republicans for decades. Decades. I think he's either in Texas or New Mexico. Professor Logos, correct? Decades. Okay. Earl shakes his head. I'm not so sure anymore. The Democrats' predicament today is 20 years in the making. It's almost hard to remember now, but in 2002, Democrats were deep in the minority. The president, George W. Bush, was immensely popular, and the GOP
He
was
was?
about to was immensely popular with I think at that time,
Mhm.
wasn't he?
He was.
Oh, were you? Oh, you're saying he was.
No, I'm saying yeah, I'm saying he was
You
quite
stated okay.
popular.
I thought it sounded like a question. Kind of threw me
I know.
off. I'm like, I think he was. And the GOP was about to win strong congressional majorities in midterms. There was no easy path back to power for Democrats. Salvation arrived in the form of a book written by the political scientist Rudy Teixeira and the journalist John B. Judas called The Emerging Democratic Majority. The book, which analyzed evolving social structures relative to voting behaviors, argued that because America was becoming more educated, more urban, more secular, more diverse, Democrats were on the verge of establishing the same kind of lock on the electoral college that the
Mm.
Republicans enjoyed in the 80s. Jane?
Yeah, this is them again,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that just because people are educated or quote unquote urban, which
Mm,
is just code for non-white,
mm,
um, and even more secular, that they would automatically align with Democrats. And that's such a superficial way of looking at people and the issues that are of concern to us.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. On the left, the book was treated as something akin to divine prophecy, though Teixeira and Judas took pains to avoid having the work reduced to the end of white America analysis. It was inevitable. The book documented how every election cycle, minorities were increasingly as a share of the overall electorate while non college educated white voters were decreasing at an even faster clip. A phrase that appeared out of nowhere in the book, demographics are destiny, became a sort of supergroup mantra for progressives whose consolation after Bush's reelection in 2004 was the assurance of a long game plan that was already being won.
I think part of that game plan was a lot of the division. I think a lot of the division we see today
Hmm.
was birthed at that time
Mm,
from those very concerns. But it's crazy because I think in terms of population,
hmm.
it's absolutely true that in a couple hundred years, maybe less, the population is going to be entirely Hispanic.
Yes, that's
Period.
just numbers. That's just numbers.
That's just how it go we don't have any major influx of people from Europe or Africa or anywhere else. So the population is going to be Hispanic. And if you think, which I think a lot of them do, that that is not a population that has an entire swath of thought and opinion from incredibly liberal to incredibly conservative,
Hmm.
such that these divisions will continue to exist because that's just how humanity is, then I think that they don't understand the humanity of the very people whose votes they're trying to get. They don't understand that complexity and that diversity of just the human experience.
Uh, uh, you know, uh, Just let me know when you're going to run for office. I will work on your campaign. The Latino slant here will be Slantinos for Jayne Theory. God, you're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And look at all these great people in the chat. We got another
Ooh.
super chat uh, from Professor Logos for $4.99. What's up, Professor? For me, being a proud Latino is part of being a patriotic American. They are not mutually exclusive. They are interrelated here in New Mexico.
Mhm.
Uh, the super majority of Latinos, I'm going to say this right now, the super majority of U.S. Latinos are very patriotic. You know, me and Romy uh, we're very liberal on a lot of issues.
Mhm.
We're super patriotic, which sometimes, like kind of like we get wrinkles from some of our friends or whatever, because they automatically connect it to being a Trumper. It's like, what? No, we're American. Whether that is the truth or not, we're Americans. It's like we got to start identifying together. Uh, Me, Jayne, Mexican Iron Man, Logos, whoever, right? That we're all American. We're all here right now.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you, Logos. And let me play
I
you a
think
little.
another thing too along those lines
Mhm.
is that I think people need to stop judging what that looks like. So, like, different people have
Right,
different experiences and value their Americanness in
right.
different ways,
Yeah,
and people should have the freedom as Americans to express that.
absolutely. Without fear uh, just being, you know, taken down for your reputation, your workplace,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, that's just absolutely 100%. Let's play a tip for Professor Logos. This is for you, buddy. Gracias.
Cuando canto la bamba yo estoy contento porque yo me acompaño, con mi instrumento ahí arriba y arriba. Bamba, bamba.
Bamba, bamba. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Let's go on with this article. All right. It took hold because, let's face it, this is something Democrats really wanted to hear. Teixeira, a Democrat himself, told me this summer. And so, of course, when Obama got elected in 2008, it was viewed as a validation of that analysis, even though Obama's election was more complicated than that.
Mhm.
Democrats won big among non-white voters since the signing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. What set apart Barack Obama's victory wasn't necessarily his margins. He carried 2/3 of Hispanics per exit vote and 95% of blacks. But the mass mobilization of these and other groups that historically uh, gone under, but the mass mobilization of these and other groups that historically gone underrepresented. Obama assembled a coalition of ascendant, as my colleague Ron Brownstein put it, cornering the demographics, young people, women with college degrees, and minorities, particularly Hispanics, that were emerging as the future of the electorate. By emphasizing these groups, by elevating them and celebrating their inclusion in the party's coalition, Democrats were portraying themselves as a party of a new America. Thoughts, Jayne?
Yeah, I think that
Who's
they
they?
these political commentator people.
No, yeah, but they say they portray themselves. Anyways, go on. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I was just saying I think that they didn't quite understand Obama's rise or even him as a candidate because and I think a lot of people sort of forget that he
Mhm.
started off with views that weren't particularly far left. But after his first term or even like the first half of his first term, he wasn't getting much support from the liberals in his own party
No.
and
That's
had
when
to
he
be
said he was
pulled.
a. Then he came out in favor of gay marriage.
Exactly, exactly. People forget that. So he couldn't really, as much as he was this fresh new candidate, representing so much, um, he wasn't able to be fully realized as the more middle to conservative leaning minority that he probably actually was, that his family sort of represented, and the Democrats were still at that time unaware of existed. So he transformed into what they needed him to be.
Right. I totally agree. He was pretty much a little left of center.
Yeah,
What do you call a moderate Democrat,
right.
which don't exist anymore.
It can't, but it's catching the Democrats by surprise because
Hmm.
every time somebody comes out who's Latino or Black and have those views that are even
Hmm.
more on the right, they
Right.
can't take it.
Right, which was transparent with Mayra Flores being denied admission to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus, even though she is the first immigrant female Mexican woman to win a congressional seat.
Hmm.
They gave her a call and said, "You can't be part of our group."
Yeah.
Absolutely,
How dare you have a different opinion?
absolutely, just ridiculous. We're going to go off topic for a second. Imagine it's not off topic, but it's off the article. Imagine Jayne letting her in
Hmm.
and having great discussions and how we can move our country forward.
Hmm.
But they've labeled Mayra Flores as this hardcore extremist and
Right.
conspiracies and everything that you can imagine.
They don't believe in discussion or
Hmm.
debate. It's
Hmm.
their way or no way. And that's going to, again, it's going to turn a lot of people off
Hmm.
who hold more conservative views, who may even disagree with some of the more quote unquote extreme points. But they don't like the dialogue, they don't like
Hmm.
the name calling. They just don't like the drama that seems to
Yeah,
be headed nowhere.
they don't like the drama. Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well put. We're here, Jayne Theory. We're going through this really vast. All right, I do gotta recommend, like, do gotta say he's really going over this landscape. And even though he's got his purviews, like he's given us a lot for the reader. Um, what are your thoughts on this article so far, by the way?
It seems like it seems like it lays out perfectly why the Democrats were caught by surprise.
Gotcha.
It does.
Yeah. When Obama put that same winning coalition back together in 2012, running up the same crushing margins among non-white voters, demography is destiny became conventional wisdom, and not just on the left. 2 days after Mitt Romney's defeat, Fox's Sean Hannity called for a comprehensive immigration reform, complete with a path to citizenship. Less Hispanic voters, uh, usher Republicans into permanent minority status. The National GOP commissioned an autopsy report focused on repairing the relationship with Hispanics. Senator Lindsey Graham, who led a team of Republicans on a doomed mission to fix the nation's immigration laws, warned that his party was entering a demographic death spiral.
Hmm.
Neither the left nor the right really understood Hispanics, who were motivated by different issues than were blacks, to the extent that they could be accurately categorized as all. In Florida alone, Cubans are generally more conservative than Colombians, who are generally more conservative than Puerto Ricans. The Mexicans who live across the Southwest have distinct ideological profiles depending on how long they've been in the United States. All the emphasis on non whites and the GOP's inability to win them made it hard to see the very different reasons that different blocs had for supporting Democrats, or their different degrees of partisan loyalty.
Hmm.
In my opinion, the Latino vote has always had a swing dimension to it, says Carlos Odio, a former Obama aide who specialized in Hispanic outreach and in 2019 co founded the Miami based firm Equis Labs. Um, and Equis, yeah, Equis, okay, Equis Labs. Now, just so happened to swing the same way over a series of elections. It's like a coin flip landed on heads over and over again for a variety of reasons, but we kept thinking the coin would always land back on their heads, and I think that's a mistake.
Hmm.
Hmm. There are two ironies at work. The first is that it required the presidency of Donald Trump, he of the I Love Hispanics, caption on a Cinco de Mayo tweet, fork digging into a Trump Tower taco bowl, for some Democrats to question their own dogma. Trump was supposedly to be uniquely unacceptable to minorities and to Hispanics in particular, given his assessments of Mexicans as, among other things, drapists. Yet, Democrats didn't see other major gains with Hispanics during his 4 years in office. Instead, their margin shrank.
Yeah. And I think that's because
Hmm.
um, they want to tie everything to the presidential candidate,
Mm.
right? As if Congress isn't even more important when it comes to domestic policy. And
Hmm.
people aren't stupid, like, despite what they seem to think. People cannot like a president or presidential candidate all they want, but they're still going to vote when it comes to Congress, when it comes to state and federal leaders
Hmm.
who are in charge of their area directly. They're going to vote for and against those people based on their own values. And you can lose. The very groups you think you should have support for if you're not showing up and if you're not hearing them and listening and responding to their concerns. Who the president is isn't going to save you anymore. If your party aligns with theirs, you're not going to be able to use the president as cover anymore. You're not going to be able to use them as a target to blame anymore. I think more voters are becoming sophisticated in holding these individual candidates accountable and not letting them say, oh, but Trump this and he's terrible and he said that, or oh, Biden this and Biden that. No, what
Mm.
have you done? What are your intentions? What are you bringing to the table? You know, that's most important anyway. So you can lose just because the president's doing something or saying something crazy. You can still see yourself losing votes where it matters in Congress because your candidates aren't doing their job.
All right. Don't forget to vote in the poll. Share the link. Let people know we're here. Thank you so much. You guys have been great in the chat. We're here with Jayne Theory, breaking this down, this Atlantic article. In the end, the 2020 election wasn't won by the ascendant non-white voters at all, Teixeira told me. It was the college-educated white voters who won the election for Biden. Hence the second irony. The very thing that breathed life into the Democratic Party 20 years ago, the focus on identity and inclusion, is making it more popular with white voters and less popular with Hispanic voters.
Hmm.
This is what far right fear merchants like Tucker Carlson failed to grasp. The immigrants demonized by his great replacement rhetoric are now, in some respects, likelier to vote Republican than the people that are supposedly replacing. Okay.
Because the people are voting based on what matters to them. They're not voting based on what some TV talk show host says or
Right.
any of those things.
Right. And they're not voting on identity and inclusion at the end of
Yeah,
the day. They
exactly.
At the end of the day, it sounds nice, but that's not what I'm voting for. That's not how I'm voting.
Right.
Democrats like Teixeira believe that the party has become culturally detached from Hispanic voters. Ooh, of course. Moving too far left on issues such as immigration, policing, and transgender rights. Democrats like Odio say the real problem is a class disconnect, in which Democrats are catering to the cultural concerns of economically secure whites at the expense of the pocketbook priorities of working Hispanics.
Agreed.
That's huge right there.
Agreed. The gender fight is definitely one that I think Democrats they've lost their minds and they're going to lose a lot of votes for because people are paying attention to that.
Well,
That
even
goes back to what we said before, the bedrock issues, family and faith. You want to push that issue, you want to make that the hill you die on.
mm,
You
The
very
hill,
well
right?
could.
Transgender, yeah, 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 yeah. And this is so on point here, catering to the cultural concerns of economically secure whites. So it's an economically secure white liberal that has a
Mhm.
Black Lives Matter uh, uh, a sign on their lawn because they can, and that's
Yes.
they're in a completely safe, secure community or whatever, but it makes them feel good. But they
Yeah,
don't
the
realize,
virtue signaling crowd.
right, right, and that, yeah, 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 yeah. Neither man is wrong. Hispanics are leaving the Democratic Party for many different reasons. This represents a sea change in our politics, Teixeira said, whether his fellow Democrats want to accept it or not. The idea that what we're seeing from the Hispanic vote recently is a deviation and that they will snap back to their historic preference for the Democrats to one, I think is a total illusion. This is the writer of that book. The co-writer of this book is saying that Democrats are delusional.
They are. He's right.
The real question is how far this trend go, and that's a great question.
Mhm.
How far are Latinos going to go to the right, and how long is that going to stay? Fantastic, fantastic. Wow, 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 wow. And Denai's here, and she's a new buddy of mine on Twitter, and she does a lot of great um, spaces and works herself on Clubhouse.
Mhm.
Welcome. I did invite you on to be here. You're welcome to come on in. Latinos overall, without overgeneralizing, are most concerned about being able to afford gas to
Yeah,
go to work to pay bills.
exactly. Like,
You know,
everyday concerns.
Denai, I'm glad you brought that up because I I went back to Phoenix for a personal family matter that I had to go. And one of my big things was like, how am I going to go? Am I going to fly and then borrow a car from one of my cousins, or am I going to drive, have my own car there? And I was like actually doing the budget. And I was like, man, the gas to go back and forth is
Mhm.
almost as much as a plane ticket,
It's
you know?
but again, it's those types of things that I feel like if politicians were forced to actually address,
Mm-hmm.
it would be more difficult for them. I remember when Obama was talking about the high-speed rail thing he was trying to do, um, that we still don't have. You know, it's like we could improve things
Yeah.
like transportation, we can improve things like roads, which also improves gas and mileage and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People's cars wouldn't get tore up as much maybe if they had roads that didn't have so many potholes. Just basic everyday things that regular people have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's something that most politicians just completely ignore because it's not
Yeah.
as fancy or not as controversial as abortion or whatever.
Denai, look in your Twitter DMs. I sent it to you this morning. It's a StreamYard link, like a Zoom link. And so all you got to do is click on through. We'd love to have you. Uh, Many Latinos are proud of the opportunity to work hard to move the family up the socioeconomic ladder. Jane,
Mhm.
hard work, working hard is now a bad word.
Yeah, I think, there's this fight, though. I think there's this thing, yes, we definitely, I think a
Uh-huh.
lot of people believe in hard work and improving themselves, but I
Hmm.
also think that people realize that Americans are among the most overworked, under vacationed people in the Western world, and it's like, what are you getting for your money besides taxes and terrible infrastructure? So so it's
Yeah.
like you want to work for something as well. There has to be a reason for it, not just so that you can make more money to pay more taxes that goes to nowhere. And I think that's where the frustration is coming from, particularly among young people who don't want to repeat this pattern of you're yeah, working hard, but
Hmm.
not seeing any actual benefit.
And joining us she got the Clubhouse. She got on Twitter. She'll explain a little bit more what she does. Denai, hello, my friend.
Hey, I am so happy that I got a chance to jump in here and listen in and hopefully participate. This conversation is a conversation that I've been having literally several times a day with everybody that I know.
Wow.
And I want to just pull out my hair because I keep on telling people the same exact stuff, right? That,
Yeah.
you know, there, okay, let me back check. Let me
Sure,
back up
sure.
and tell you where.
Yeah, look, give me your overall thoughts on this article, what you talk about every day, and then I want to keep on reading the article.
Absolutely. So,
Mhm.
um, there's this view of Latinos that has been portrayed across the media where, we're a drain on the economy. Everything about us has to do with immigration,
Mhm.
and we're out for handouts and blah blah blah. And people don't realize that number one, Latinos are huge contributors to the economy. We have pulled this country out of the last two recessions. We are our consumerism, and I come from a background of marketing. I work with brands, I connect them with Latino consumers, so I know the numbers, right? We
Mhm.
represent almost 3 trillion in GDP if we were our own country, which puts us ahead of like France, Italy, Europe, most of Europe, UK,
Wow.
Canada. Yeah, so
Not
I'm
surprised.
speaking
Yeah.
from a place of knowing the numbers. Latinos are more concerned with being able to pay their bills, right? And when I say they're concerned with being able to pay their bills, a big part of Latinidad is being able to take care of your family and move
Mhm.
forward upwards through the socioeconomic ladder, right? So for a lot of Latinos, having two jobs and working hard, those are pride. Those are things that have to do with the pride of us being here and moving forward and moving our families up the socioeconomic ladder. So it goes totally against all of the rhetoric that is thrown at us from either party. But the Republicans really do a much better job of communicating that stuff, right? The economy, opportunity, the
Mhm.
American dream. And so yeah, I'll stop there and I'll
No, that's
let you
great.
go
You
forward with
know,
that.
Denai, if you can let my audience know as far as what do you with the clubhouse and what part of if you don't mind, what part of the country you're hailing from, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Danaya Scanaverino. I own a digital agency. I have been in digital marketing for over 25 years, pretty much since like the beginning of digital marketing. And I
Wow.
work with brands. I connect them with multicultural consumers with a focus on Latinos. And I host a lot of events on Clubhouse. We are the largest Latino community with almost 39,000 members on that
Nice.
platform. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, and primarily we talk about issues from a Latino lens. So we host events, with Latinos in venture capital, and we talk about the status of Latinos in venture capital. We talk a lot about the data, and then we talk about and highlight people who are effecting change, Latino leaders who are effecting change. We do that with healthcare. We do that with Latinos in media and entertainment. So basically, we look at where Latinos stand in the United States within specific industries. We talk about problems, right? But more
Mhm.
importantly, we talk about the solutions that Latinos are bringing to those types of problems and hurdles. So that's kind of what I do.
Awesome. Wonderful. And you're in Florida? You're hailing from Florida? Is
Oh,
that correct?
sorry, I forgot to answer that question. I am in Virginia. I was born in Cuba.
Virginia.
Yeah, I was born in Cuba. I grew up in Miami, and I now live in Virginia.
So so that makes you by default then an alt-right, because you're Cuban, you're, I'm just kidding.
Alt-right racist.
I
You're
love it.
alt-right
Yeah, right.
racist. You're not,
That's
you're
who I am. Yeah, no, I'm actually. I would say
no,
it's funny
no guys,
because
no. That I'm joking. Jeez.
most of my family is hardcore Republican. They
Mm,
love their Trump, right? I am an independent. I've gone back and forth between Republican and Democrat, and I just cannot commit to any of either one, because there's just, frankly, they're so full of bleh, that
Mhm.
I just can't take it, and so I can't commit. So I'm full on independent, and I see most politicians for what they are, which is people that are just trying to keep their jobs and live a nice, wealthy life.
Oh, that absolutely.
Agreed.
Ooh, girl. Well, we're happy you're here. And Jayne Theory, Deny, thank you for joining us. You can follow everyone there. The links are in the chat. Let's go on with this article, which I find
It's a great
fascinating.
article.
Yeah. The timing couldn't be worse for Democrats. According to Pew Research, the U.S. Hispanic population has grown to 62 million from fewer than 10 million in 1970. Hispanics account for more than half of America's population growth from 2010 to 2020. That's a lot of babies. Um, in the last election, Hispanics eclipsed African Americans in terms of raw eligible voters.
Mhm.
Hispanics are not yet a national force. Their numbers are still diluted in the upper Midwest, for instance, but in several key battleground states, such as Florida, Texas, Arizona, they've become the most essential and most coveted demographic. We're in a game of tug of war. There are two sides, Odio told me. Democrats are going to lose where they let go of the rope. And anytime you guys want to, say something, please. I asked him where Democrats are in the most trouble with Hispanic voters. Odio didn't hesitate. It's a place where he lives, Miami, Florida. Juan Cuba can still remember the moment he began to worry. In 2013, the Democrats were
Mhm.
euphoric after Obama's back-to-back victories. Not only had the president carried Florida, but in both elections, but he made but he had made a statement in Miami-Dade County, a place crowded with Cuban Americans who, due to historic distrust of the Democratic Party dating back to John F. Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs, have aligned more with the GOP than other Hispanics. Obama won the state's most populous county by 16 points in 2008, 24 points in 2012. In a place where Republicans had spent a generation building relationships with Hispanic voters, much of it thanks to Jeb Bush, the
Mhm.
popular bilingual governor whose brother ran two ultra competitive presidential campaigns at Miami Dade, Obama's triumphs felt like a watershed. And yet, Cuba, who assumed the role of executive director of the Miami Dade Democratic Party after Obama's reelection, started seeing red flags. No pun intended there. As the 2014 midterm campaign got underway, Democrats spoke with a certainty, bordering on arrogance, about the Hispanic vote being locked up. Those who had turned out for Obama, Cuba told me, were now considered part of the party base. Charlie
It
Crist?
was a big mistake.
Right. Charlie Crist? Is that how you say his name? Christ?
Yeah, Chris.
The Democratic nominee for governor campaigned as if Hispanics were a sure thing. They would vote, and they would vote for Democrats. Crist lost the governor's race by about 64,000 votes. And although he won Miami-Dade by a sizable margin, Turner lagged relative to both parties' expectations. He had engaged more voters. Had we engaged more voters, especially Hispanic voters, we would have won that race. Cuba said.
And
Thoughts,
that's the
guys?
biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. When these parties get comfortable, when these political leaders get comfortable, they begin leaving votes on the table. They
Mhm.
don't go after them. They don't really fight for them the way they ordinarily would, or the way they frankly should be expected to. They just assume, oh, we have them completely locked up based on the last election or the national election. And they don't realize it's not the same thing. Local and state elections are a completely different ballgame. And if you just ignore a population or assume you have their votes or discount them or
Mhm.
devalue them, you're not going to get it. They either won't vote for you and vote for the other side who actually do show up and knock on the door, or they just won't vote at all. Because what's the point? You clearly don't care about their concerns.
Deny any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that, I mean, but this happens every single election cycle, right? Somebody comes out, they make a lot of promises to Latinos,
Mm.
treat us as a big old monolith, and assume that we, are all Democrats except for the Cubans and the Venezuelans. And so, uh, who the Republicans always like to romance. And yeah, I think the for me the problem is that they make all of these promises, and then they completely disappear. Like they don't even, I mean, look at the talk, going back to immigration. Look at the issue at the border. I have never seen an administration just be so good at completely ignoring something so massive. And so I don't know. I don't know what to say. I know that a lot of promises are made and then they completely ignore the Latino vote. And then another election cycle will come around and promises, and then they'll ignore it again.
I think sometimes it's ignored because they feel like they can use it as a political football. If they solve the problem at the border, which they easily could, then they wouldn't have it to talk about. Like you would scratch that off the list of controversial things to run on. They need stuff for their campaign ads.
Well, we have a poll going on, a very very scientific poll going on in the chat. Which party better stands for the values and policies that Hispanics value? 46 votes casted, 7% Democrats, 65% Republicans, 28% neither.
Yeah, that would be me. I was that 28.
Are you? Hey, I get it. If you haven't voted, please vote now. You don't have to be a Latino to vote, by the way. All right. When Hillary Clinton clinched the Democratic nomination in 2016, Democrats in South Florida stressed to her team the importance of not repeating that mistake. Clinton poured resources into Miami-Dade, running a ground game that located existing voters, registered new ones, and tracked both to make sure they were casting ballots. Cuba's concerns about the party's complacency were assuaged. Am I saying that right?
Assuaged.
Thank you. That's why you're here, Jayne. That's why you're here. You two are just. He had a new worry, however. Messages used by Clinton and her Democratic allies to mobilize Hispanic voters were nothing like what they had used in the Obama campaigns. There was little about hope and change. It was mostly about fear and victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
2016. Yeah.
Victimhood.
Interesting. I'm an immigrant myself. When I think back to what worked on those Obama campaigns, it was really what he spoke to the aspirations of Hispanics. He talked about the American dream. He gave people a sense of how the Democratic Party was about social mobility through hard work, Cuba said. But 2016 was we'd become less the party of the American dream and more the party of anti-Trump.
Yeah. That was the never her, never him era. So that's what the entire campaign had gotten reduced down to, as opposed to actual issues.
Did I?
No, listen. I drank the Obama Kool-Aid both times over. I loved his message of hope, and that's spot on because it was a message about hope. It was a message about the American dream, and as an immigrant, that's a huge part of how we identify. That's a huge part of our culture is, we're here to work and we're here to, again, move up that socioeconomic ladder. And if it's not for us, then it'll be for the next generation. But that's basically what we're all coming over here to do. And so I don't know one immigrant who sees themselves as a victim. Right. All of the immigrants that I grew up around, and I grew up in Miami. So basically everybody there, and everybody I've ever known, when you speak to somebody who immigrated to this country, it's a very different point of view. They want to come in. They want to work. We're coming from places that have nothing. We're coming to a place for our dreams to move forward, to acquire, achieve. And so we don't see ourselves as victims. We see ourselves as the lucky ones that got out. And I think that they're missing. They're really, really missing the fact that we don't see ourselves as victims.
Yeah. And I think that's why he was able to speak to that, because he lived it with his father being an immigrant. And I even remember him talking about his mother's Irish side and, talking about that sort of immigration history.
Well,
Um,
his white side raised him.
yeah.
His
Mhm.
grandparents raised him. He had but not to get too far. I'm exactly there. Deny. I drank the Kool-Aid. As well. Um, he was our JFK. And he was very aspiring. The thing what's great about looking back is that you can you can look back at the record, and the record just didn't show that for me, as far as what Obama promised and what was delivered. But
He was
that's a
never
different
going to be able to deliver it.
that's a different
And
argument.
and
Yeah.
that's because of Congress. People
So
forget the importance of Congress when it comes to laws and domestic policy. You're never going to have a hero in the president.
we can have one as far as in our dreams.
Yeah, they can make aspirational
He could, right.
speeches,
Hmm.
but they're not the ones writing the policy.
Okay, let's get back to this article. All right. It worked, at least initially. Clinton carried Miami-Dade by nearly 30 points against Trump, an unprecedented margin in Florida's biggest county. But Cuba, who rose to the position of the county party chair in 2017, recalls how quickly the anti-Trump message began losing potency. The economy was roaring back to life after 8 sluggish years of post-recession recovery. At the same time, that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, emboldened by Bernie Sanders' insurgency in 2016, was espousing an open distrust of capitalism, questioning the existence of opportunity and upward mobility in America. I'll never forget, we did a focus group with Hispanic voters in 2019, Cuba said. It was clear that a lot of Hispanics voted against Trump in 2016 because they were scared of him. By 2019, they weren't scared anymore. Marilena Lopez, who held a variety of positions under Cuba in the county party, saw this shift taking place in real time. She believes that there's no real mystery to it. While Trump successfully portrayed himself as a populist, achieving hard-won economic growth, signing tax cuts into law, touting a record-shattering stock market, boasting the lowest Hispanic unemployment rate in history, Democrats came across a bunch of out-of-touch Democrats came across as a bunch of out-of-touch ideologues. Promises of a shared social progress, she told me, offended the sensibilities of many first and second generation immigrants who hate the idea of government handouts. That's great. That's great. We're not a political party, we're charity. You know that? These people don't want charity, Lopez says. These immigrants come here to make money and to keep families safe. They're not here because the sea levels are rising, because of social injustice
Global warming.
or anything else. We're out here, we're out there talking about racism, and the Green New Deal and defunding the police, and we're freaking them out. Lopez, a former Republican who in the mid-1990s became estranged from the GOP of her youth, she became an avid Democrat during Obama's first run, got deeply involved in local party politics, today serves as first vice chair of the county party. She counts herself as a progressive on nearly every issue. But Lopez said many of her fellow progressives don't appreciate how fundamentally conservative the Hispanic community is.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. More religious, more entrepreneurial, more working class relative to the other cogs in the Democratic coalition. Let me grab some water. I'm getting a little cotton mouth. Can you please, Jayne and Denai, give us your thoughts?
I mean, I think that is the key fundamental problem with Democrats and their perspective on things right now. Like, they don't understand that America, the Hispanic community, the Black community, the working class community, people are still generally conservative, or at least conservative leaning, and certainly are not on this far left spectrum, end of the spectrum, that many of them seem to be. And this divisiveness that they try to promote in order to uh, foster division to get votes is not a working strategy, because most Americans don't see the world the same way they do. And what's shaping their ideas and their policies are increasingly running contrary to just basic everyday American values that just regular people who are trying to support their families and go to work and live believe in. They're just tone deaf or out of touch. I don't know how best to describe it, but they just don't get it. And if anything, it seems like they're starting to resent um, the majority of Americans.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I go back to, and I agree with everything you're saying, Jane. I go back to opportunity, right? And again, you know, I speak from the lens of an immigrant. I also, uh, I also speak from the lens of somebody who came from a dictatorship, right? Communist. My dad was a political prisoner. So I grew up with, you know, America is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think a lot of Latinos, even if you're not an immigrant and, you know, you've been here for generations, right? And you're third, second, fourth generation, a lot of Latinos still have that view. They have the view of opportunity and of you know, bettering yourself. And I go back to that because I think that the Democratic Party just completely has become I don't know. It's like they forgot that that is a big part of the, you know, the American values that Jane was referring to. It's opportunity. It's moving forward, and you know, part of that means going to work. Part of that means producing and being productive. And you know, when you have to focus on being productive and going to work, again, in the interest of moving your family towards that opportunity, you're not really concerned with you know, what you're not concerned with all of the things that the Democratic Party is so progressively moving towards. Those things do not affect you in your everyday life to try to get to that opportunity. It just doesn't. So yeah, I agree with you on that as well.
I'm back. Thanks for not burning down the channel, Jane. Much needed quick little break, and I got some water, which is really good. Thank you everyone for being here. Great chat, great discussion. If you'd be so kind, any donations to the channel help. You got super chats, you got PayPal, and we really appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you to Jayne Theory and Deny. Thanks for your time on this.
Anytime.
All
Yeah,
right,
thanks for having me.
let's rock it. At one point in our conversation, I mentioned the Lopez, how the overturning of Roe v. Wade seemed to be muddying forecasts of a Republican romp at the polls in November. How some Democrats, particularly those running in wealthy white suburbs, were gaining momentum in their campaigns by hammering the GOP's anti-abortion platform. Lopez, who had been quite animated, suddenly lowered her voice. You see, that's a perfect example. I'm telling every single one of my candidates, do not talk about abortion on this campaign. That's a Democratic Party chair, right? Vice chair. And Lopez said, you have a lot of Latinos who are fine with abortion being fine with abortion being the law of the land, but they are against it morally.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be quote unquote pro-life, but don't shove the issue down their face. Don't
Mm-hmm.
force them to choose sides. They might not choose the side you would think.
Exactly.
That's
Wow.
heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy. And I can tell you, as of this morning, watching some Democratic speeches on the trail, they're still doing this. They
Yeah.
are still doing it is the
Yeah.
most important thing. I've had uh, friends basically saying, vote Democrat or you're gonna die, or
Mhm.
they're gonna force you to
Yeah.
do. I mean, it's just crazy. It's
They don't get
crazy.
it. They don't
Go
get
ahead. I'm
it.
sorry. Mm-hmm.
They just don't understand.
Mm.
I don't know what world they're living in. It's like they're in a completely different universe. They're not reading the room. And it's the issues just like this that they try to force you to choose on that can cause them to lose votes where they otherwise would be in agreement.
Deny. Why? Why are they choosing this hill to die on?
I mean, listen, on a personal front, this is a very, very important issue, right? I'm 100% pro-choice. I am personally pro-life, but as you know, as in regards to the government, I'm very much pro-choice. That said, I think so, and this might not be a popular opinion, but and you can tell me if you think I'm way off base. I feel like Latinos are really, really have a lot in common with the Southerners in the United States.
Mhm.
Now,
Mm,
hold
interesting.
on.
No, interesting.
Hold on.
No,
I
no,
agree
no,
with you.
no.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Family first, religion first, hard work, right? All of those
Mhm.
things are important
Mhm.
to Southerners. All of those things are important to Latinos. I think we have a lot more in common. Again, being kind of like overgeneralizing, obviously.
Uh-huh.
I think we have a hell of a lot more in common than people may want to, admit, and especially on the Democratic side of things.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think that's what they're missing. Is that it's not even just Southerners. I think they're going to start losing ground even in places like California, even in places like New York, because they are forgetting your average American, like your regular person, still holds those values to heart. Like that's still very important for the vast, overwhelming majority of Americans. And they don't understand that for some reason. They think because the country is becoming more quote unquote brown, that means that these people don't share those same conservative values. And it's like, where have you been for the entire history of this country? Like, if anything, it's white liberals who are the ones who are the extremists.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is pretty much on the other side of it. And that hasn't changed in
Fantastic
ever.
talk here, guys. Really appreciate you both being here and in the chat. Lighten it up. Thank you so much. Um, let's keep going. To some extent, Lopez said the same principles apply to other issues she feels the Democrats are enamored of: green energy, racial justice, individual pronouns, and group identities. What the hell is a Latinx? She said. Latinx, Latinx, whatever, however you pronounce it. Throwing up her arms. We're now inventing a language. But this
Yeah.
was one of the many unsolicited rants I heard against the term
And
Latinx. Unsolicited. I love that.
then they forced it on people. Like the Latinx thing, they really pushed so hard for that.
Well, I know that Denai uses that in her clubhouse thing, which is kind of interesting, but again, that's fine. What I'm saying is, Denai, these are not, this is not the top 5 issues that
Oh,
are facing
absolutely.
Latinos.
Absolutely. Listen, we use it interchangeably with Latino, Latina, Latinx, to be inclusive, because there are so many people that really want to identify as Latinx. I identify as Latina. I honestly don't care what the hell you call me. I know who I am, so it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But you know, yeah, there are many people. So, and I can't remember the name of the report, but recently a report came out. I don't remember if it was LULAC or one of these large Latino organizations, where they said that like 88% of their membership does not want to be called Latinx, does not want to deal with Latinx, does not want to even hear the word. So
Right.
the majority of Latinos identify as, whether the majority of Latinos identify as Mexicano, Chicano, Cubano, Tejano, Puerto Riqueño, Dominicano, honestly, right? But above that, they identify as Latino. They don't identify as Latinx. So yeah, that's a moot point at this point.
Lopez says it's all about opportunity costs. Every minute Democrats spend on topics that appeal to small portions of their existing base is time that could have been spent speaking to a single theme that preoccupies voters across ideological spectrums: jobs, opportunity, upward mobility. Yes.
But it doesn't play well, I guess. From their perspective, it doesn't play well in political advertisements. And they still see division as a strategy. So if they talk about these issues, you're not going to get the same vitriol in the debates and whatnot.
You can still be the party of all those things, she said, just don't talk about them so much. Of course, the challenge for Democrats isn't just modulating the message, it's also combating the right wing misinformation machine, of course. When I sat down with Joe Garcia on the narrow concrete slab patio of a Miami Beach cafe, the former congressman spoke in fatalistic tones. A political party is only as good as its rhetoric, Garcia told me. Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I was just chuckling. I'm sorry.
I want to know why. Okay, we'll get to it. Garcia told me in South Florida, Democrats are losing the rhetoric war to Republicans badly. Garcia, who was elected alongside Obama in 2012, represented his native Cuban neighborhoods in western Miami-Dade. Said Republicans have always been craftier in delivering their message on Spanish language TV and radio. What's new, he said, is the way conservatives have swarmed the most popular social media pages and WhatsApp chat groups in his community, relentlessly circulating half-sourced posts that portray the Democratic Party as weak on crime and soft on socialism. Whoa. Look at Biden's new Cuba policy, for instance, Garcia said. What the administration announced in the spring, the relaunching of a family reunification program, increased flights to the island, and easing the restrictions on the money Americans can send and invest there, should actually be more popular with Cubans than Trump's hardline policies, Garcia said. But the White House, according to numerous Democrats on the ground, did nothing to coordinate a messaging strategy around these policy changes. Nobody here could get booked on a local news program or write a social media post defending the new policies because they found out about them at the same time everyone in the general public did. As a result, Garcia told me, puffing a massive Cuban cigar. Ooh, that sounds good. Democrats are getting killed every day on Spanish language media here. Even though it's an argument, we should be winning. This episode.
So wait, that goes to their infrastructure then, their ability to communicate. That's a party problem.
Yeah.
That's an organization problem.
Sure. Deny?
The fact that I didn't know about it until I read this article, and I'm like heavily on top of any issues having to do with Cuban-American relations or the basic lack thereof, just tells you that it's a total fail. If I don't know about it, and again, I'm reading El Nuevo Herald, I'm reading Diario de las Américas, I'm watching all of the TV channels. It's an epic fail. But then that's the administration on just about everything that they've been able to achieve. They have passed a lot of legislation, and most people aren't aware of what it is that they did and how it's going to affect them in their everyday lives. It's just a huge fail all around.
Wow. What about would it resonate? Would have it resonated? Would have does it go back to them just taking the Democratic vote, the Latino vote for granted? I mean, why wasn't this bigger news?
I think they didn't know how to communicate it, because what you would be talking about, fundamentally family and investment, right? Um, and those two things have been looked at as bad words on the far left of the party. So if you're emphasizing that, if you're emphasizing family, if you're emphasizing economic prosperity through investment, that could put them at odds. That could create a split, I think, within the Democrats in their various wings.
Deny?
Well, and specifically to the Cuba
Right.
topic, right? So,
Right.
there's this whole trade embargo thing, and a large percentage of the Cuban population in Miami is very much pro embargo, because they know that whatever money goes to, gets opened up, goes to the government, it goes directly to the government. Like, it doesn't trickle down to the people.
In
So
serio.
that's
Wow.
an issue in itself,
That's
right?
huge. Yeah.
And so for that conversation to happen, it's a huge conversation, and there are lots of obstacles just within the staunchly Republican Cubans in Miami that you have to overcome. So just knowing that that there was no messaging around it, and knowing that they haven't figured out a way to have that conversation with people, just goes to the whole, like, the messaging is non-existent. It's non-existent with them.
This is great. I love this. Thank you guys for being here. Let's go on. Garcia pointed out in 2018, when Democrats nominated Andrew Gillum for governor, a candidate endorsed by Bernie Sanders, Garcia and his fellow Democrats in Miami could already recite the attacks on Gillum as a sleeper socialist. When those attacks came, Gillum didn't do much to dispel them. When NBC's Chuck Todd asked if he was a socialist, Gillum simply replied, "No, I'm a Democrat." He wound up winning Miami-Dade by 21 points, down from Clinton's 30-point margin 2 years before, and lost the election votes statewide. And lost the election by over 32,000 statewide votes. Let's face it, Garcia said. We lost the governorship to Ron DeSantis because our nominee wouldn't come out and say, "I'm not a goddamn socialist." Wow.
Wow.
I didn't know this, but that's state politics, but that says a lot. That says a lot right there.
And it's
Democrats,
the state where, I'm sorry, it's the state where if you're going to run, you definitely want to say, "I am absolutely 100% not socialist." But, like, of all the states to have that declaration, Florida is definitely the one where you want to.
Right.
I am not 100% not socialist. So yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. You're absolutely right. Of all states that has any communism or socialism, legacy of immigrants coming, it's Florida. 100% denounce social. That. Oh, wow.
Yeah, do that, and then talk to the actual issues that people have concerns.
Right, get that out of the way in a affirmative manner. Right, you're absolutely right, Jayne. And then get to the
and stop it from being a talking point, because that ultimately is what it's going to become, and then take up the entire conversation.
Democrats here say the National Party should have learned a hard lesson from the campaign. Instead, after 2018, the party ranks began to swell with influential young progressives. Here we go. Such as New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who championed far-left policies while openly embracing a socialist label. Moderate Democrats were reluctant to push back. It was a Republican dream come true. By the time Trump ran for re-election in 2020, the GOP had scaled up the socialism attacks nationwide. The reward was clearest in South Florida. Republicans knocked off 2 Democratic congressional incumbents, and Trump closed the gap in Miami-Dade to 7 points, a 23-point swing from 2016. Yep. What?
Yeah.
There you have it.
Oh my God, I did not know that.
Wow.
The name AOC came up in dozens of my conversations with Hispanic Democrats around the country, many whom are struggling to neutralize the socialism charge in their own communities by turning the young representative into a boogeyman. Garcia told me. This is Democrats doing it. Oh, wait. Well, Republicans force Democrats to play defensive over labels and abstractions while rendering the left version of 21st century populism unacceptable to a huge swath of the electorate that might otherwise be receptive to it. Wow. Some campaign volunteers there in Miami. Any thoughts, guys? I'll just keep reading.
Just, not surprising.
Yeah. She's not Vladimir Lenin, Karl Marx, Joseph Stalin, Mao, or anything like that. She's a classic Northeastern liberal who's pushing a social agenda that, in many respects, has real viability at a time like this, Garcia said of AOC. So how do you shut down the debate? You engage in name calling. You use propaganda to scare us from acting on the issues most important to our base. Wait a minute. Garcia is saying that her agenda is viable in a time like this, and that the name calling and propaganda used against her or those are scaring us from acting on issues most important to our base. Well, I disagree here, Garcia. I mean, these issues, what AOC's issues are not most important. Oh, to our base. Okay, well, yeah, if your base is okay, it's not important to the Latino vote.
Again, this is how they're framing the argument, though. Like the name calling is only coming from one direction, or the effort to shut down debate is only coming from one direction. It's both parties doing it. That's why we're not able to really sit down and have normal conversations about what the actual issues are underlying these labels that people want to throw around. To me, it's just lazy. It's lazy to reduce everyone to one-word adjectives as opposed to actually discussing policies. But I think the politicians prefer it that way because then they don't have to answer questions.
Well, and you're right. It is lazy. They're taking the easy route because, I mean, look, socialism exists everywhere, right? We're not just a capitalist economy. We're actually a mixed economy, and we're a mixed government. And, we have national parks, we have firefighters, we have police, we have social security. Like,
all social
we have
programs.
Socialist things in our country. And they're not bad. But the right has done such an amazing job of bringing in the socialism boogeyman and tagging or labeling everybody on the left who goes too far left as a socialist. It completely it stops any type of talk about it. We just have no dialogue. It's just strictly, oh, okay, you're a socialist, let's move on. But I think the left has an opportunity to, kind of say, well, no, this is not just socialist boogeyman, and really talk about, guess what? We do have socialist things in our country, and they're okay. And this doesn't mean that we're going to try to go far, far left. But that's the problem, right? There's also all that far left rhetoric that kind of, crosses that out. So I don't know.
Right. Well, we have social programs that have been existing, right? And the thing is that it's wording. So, we have, if you say socialist programs, you're going to turn off voters. Talk about social programs and how they have contributed, how they helped out in everyone's daily life, not the handout programs. People don't want to hear about that.
But I think part of the problem too with that even is there's so much bureaucracy, right? That a lot of Americans don't feel that they are even benefiting from those programs. So if government seems to just not be functioning right at any level, they no longer tend to trust government to even handle those functions and those programs. And that's part of the conversation too, is incompetence in government.
And Rafem is in the chat, which I really appreciate your dialogue. Do Latinos not see the great programs that exist in Finland, Germany, Norway? Those are completely different countries as far as just how they're structured and how they run. And it's
a lot smaller too.
They're so small, Rafem. I mean,
like a state. Not
It's a
even.
yeah, we are over 50 states trying to do this all together. So I get it. I get what you're getting at. It's just I don't know if those are good examples, or it's nice to see that in little countries, that work out like that. Do Latinos not want affordable medicine, clean air and water? Of course, but it's not. Listen, I'm just going by data, Rafam. Data shows that is not in their top 5 issues. Top
I think
10.
those are things that people sort of expect to go without saying.
Sure.
Like, it's, if you like when we heard about, I think it was, I don't want to get it wrong, but Mississippi, I think they were having a water crisis.
Mm,
Um, the people in those places are
mhm.
certainly going to hold their local officials accountable for that.
Yeah.
Um, and that will be a priority for them. And it is an issue, but I think most people just assume that their government leaders would have at least enough sense to know that they should be working on making sure that our air and water are safe. But I mean, maybe we give them too much credit.
And Rafam, I appreciate your dialogue in the chat. Okay, we have some super chats that I want to make sure I don't miss. We got a couple, and I really, really thank you guys. Glizner comes in for $5. Hey, Glizner. Whenever y'all say I didn't know that, it makes my already low opinion of the MSM drop even lower. At the center of the earth about now. It's at the center of the earth by now. I, what's MSM?
Mainstream media, maybe?
Oh, right. In regards to when we're talking about that Cuban thing. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of different media outlets, different news outlets, how we get our news, and that's important just for us to keep those channels going. Kind of like how, and I don't want to get too far off, how the mainstream media uh, w- continues to see the current crisis in Cuba going on. It was a big thing about, I would say, less than a year ago. People like Andy Garcia and different Cuban actors were really speaking out against what's going on. Mainstream media kind of suppressed it a little bit. So, Glizner, thank you for that. Just, keep doing your research on news. Professor Logos for $9.99. Having a social safety net is not socialism. Socialism is when the government owns the means of production. Let's not conflate the two. I suppose a strong safety net. I suppose a strong safety net. I think most of, oh, I support a strong safety net, social safety net. I think most Americans do. Ladies, any opinion on that one?
Right. But here's the thing. That's not what is being communicated, right? Like I said, there's a lot of socialist stuff that there are a lot of socialist systems that exist in our country. We do have a lot of safety nets already. Could there be more? Absolutely. Are there, inefficiencies in what we do and how we run things? 100%, right? Which is why so many people also complain about the bloat in our government. But yeah, so socialism is when the government owns the means of production. However, that's not what's being communicated by either the right or the left. And so that's the problem, is that, nobody really knows what it is, except it seems to be this big boogeyman that people don't want. And so anytime you're labeled with socialist, you're done. And so you have to figure out a way to go around that and not be labeled as a socialist if you want to bring in, socialist policies. It's just a boogeyman. The name is a boogeyman, and you have to work around it.
Want to thank you guys for those super chats. And let me see, what do we got? Oh, speaking of Cuba, here we go. Real news. That is a real Cuban lady. Hashtag not fake news. That was footage from a friend who was there last year, I think, whatever. I, I love that one. And the cigar, sporting that cigar. Okay, here we go. He also acknowledges, however, the Democratic base is changing. Progressive policies around climate or guns or even immigration might poll well with the liberal, college-educated wing of the party, but they might also continue to alienate the working class. No, they are, including the Hispanic working class, from the Democratic brand. Days before I sat down with Garcia in Miami Beach, a poll from the New York Times and Siena College showed, for the first time in the survey's history, the Democrats had a large share of support among white college graduates than among non-white voters. This is what Carlos Odio meant when he told me National Democrats have to let go of the rope in Miami-Dade County. It wasn't that his party would no longer compete for votes down there. Rather, it was that his party was acknowledging a new reality in which affluent white voters are a higher political priority than working class Hispanics. This would have been unthinkable just 5 years ago. I asked Garcia if he was comfortable with such a trade-off. He shrugged. That's how we won last time. In Bruno Lozano's blue pickup truck, the air conditioning whistling through every vent, we stopped and gazed at the Del Rio. We're in Texas now, International Bridge. It was here. Lozano told me that in September 21, tens of thousands of Haitian immigrants gathered underneath the bridge and set up camp for several days in extreme heat. Del Rio had dealt with migrant waves before, but nothing like this. The city could not handle the influx. Could not. Not would not. It's could. There's a big difference, guys. Its border processing facilities were at capacity. I told you this, Jayne, at the beginning. Mm-hmm. We are taxed. We are heavily taxed. And we have the most humane policies in regards to undocumented people coming here.
Because that's their choice. They could expand upon those departments. They could hire more judges. They could hire more lawyers. They could, they could match whatever the need is. That's the whole point of that department.
The city could not handle the influx. Its border processing facilities were at capacity. Its humanitarian workers passed their breaking point. The community was panicked. Lozano, then the mayor, was desperate. Some of these migrants, he thought, were going to die. I'm right here at the bridge watching this thing spiral out of control, and Democrats are watching and are like, nothing to see here.
Exactly.
Nothing to see. Wow.
And still, that's what's happening.
And still, thank you. And still nothing is happening. Has a major cabinet member been to the border?
I don't know of any, but I also don't think what can they do there? They need to go to their offices and get some legislation passed.
Sure, I'm just saying that,
expand. I don't like it, honestly, when they do that, when they go for their photo op or whatever. They know what the numbers are. They're getting the reports. Right. So they need to be developing the policies to fix it. That's their whole job.
Yeah. Okay. Lozano told me he reached out to every Democratic official he could think of in Texas and beyond, pleading for any help or resources they could offer. This is the then mayor of Del Rio. That's him right here, too.
That's the young guy, right?
That's the young guy.
It's like 35.
Former mayor. God, he looks like being a apocalypto or something. He looks like an actor. Look at him. Good looking dude.
Does that?
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay. Okay, anyways, I'll stop with that. When that failed, he asked them to come out he asked them to come visit Del Rio, at least to shine a light on what's happening at the border. They looked away, Lozano said, just pretending it's not happening. Oh my God. Democrats, what Democratic leaders, what are you guys doing, man? Y'all losing it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. When he was elected mayor of Del Rio in 2018, Lozano, just 35 years old at the time, fit the profile of a rising star in the Democratic Party. An openly gay Hispanic military veteran. Whoa! Lozano checked every box for the party. Since he had defeated a Republican incumbent, just as his county was beginning to turn red. Lozano said, "You would figure Democrats might listen when I'm telling them something is wrong." Lozano said he began sounding the alarm almost as soon as Biden took office. He told his fellow Democrats that for all the damage done by Trump's cruel border policies, a relaxed approach to border enforcement could
Oh,
prove even more disastrous. Yep,
he
he had
did.
some.
There was. Oh my God, this is so annoying to me. But this is how people talk.
Mm-hmm,
There were no Trump policies. He enforced the law. Okay. You could say he shouldn't have instructed them to enforce it to the degree to which they did. But if the law is what it is, if it says what it says, you
mm-hmm,
can't be mad that the enforcement branch of government is enforcing it the way the law drafting, law making branch of government wrote it.
mm-hmm.
This is a congressional problem, and they don't want to hold themselves accountable for it. If the border issue is a problem, then it's up to Congress to pass the laws and develop the policies to expand the resources to get it done, to address it, instead of just letting it linger throughout all of these various administrations. They're dropping the ball and people aren't holding them accountable because it's so much easier to point the finger at whichever president is in power at the time.
Deny any thoughts?
I 100% agree. Listen, on a personal note, I had a cousin who came from Cuba, and because of the then policies, she actually went through Nicaragua and dealt with some really bad people, and eventually made it over the border. She spent a year in detainment. And
Processing, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm,
she spent a year in detainment. I was finally able to get her out with a lot of effort and a lot of help from an attorney, which wasn't cheap. But I'm just grateful that I was able to have the resources to do that. But so I just wanted to be 100%, 100% clear on
mm-hmm.
how it affects me and my family personally.
Sure.
But that said, the data's there, and the data is that right now the numbers that are coming over the border are just too much for these border towns and these border states to be able to handle effectively. So something has to be done. I can't tell you what, but doing nothing is
It's worse.
disastrous.
It's worse.
Absolutely disastrous.
It's
Yeah.
worse. And
And
I'm
ignoring it
happy.
is horrendous.
I'm so happy you shared your personal story and with everyone in the chat. I mean, that's what makes this conversation real. And we need more of this discourse. And we're kind of disagreeing on little things, but we're having a grown up talk, Jayne. Can you imagine that around
Yeah.
politics?
Who knew?
Jeez. Wow. You guys are killing in the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the love. I'll get to your super chat in a second. He warned them of potential humanitarian or national security crisis. He told high-ranking party officials in Austin and in Washington, including during a visit to the White House for an LGBTQ pride event, that Hispanics in his community were turning on the Democratic Party in part because of its indifference to the chaos at the southern border. I mean, the dumbest thing you could do is ignore the Latinos. You don't sleep on them, man.
It's so ridiculous.
Ugh.
But again, I think they're ignoring it because they can use it as a talking point. It's as long as they can use it as political fodder, then they
He
will.
told me they refused to listen. And today, Lozano, pulling into the parking lot of a Ramada Inn a few miles away from the border, says the problem is even worse than ever. The Ramada is where locals host wedding receptions, where business people and politicians meet for breakfast, and where, on a blazing July afternoon, the Del Rio Chamber of Commerce was holding its monthly luncheon. So, guys, we've gone all over the country with this article, and 20, 40 years past, history. This is a sweeping story. I really appreciate. Whether I agree with everything this writer is saying and how he's saying it, that's another thing. But the legwork on this, there was no vacancy at the hotel. Rooms were booked for Border Patrol agents who had flooded into the area to reinforce a sector that was being overrun. This is the biggest wave of illegal immigration in American history, and we're at the epicenter of it here in Del Rio. Jason Owens, the Border Patrol's chief patrol agent of the Del Rio sector, announced at the luncheon. In the last 24 hours, we have apprehended 2,240 people in this sector alone. The room buzzed. 40 or so people, local entrepreneurs, most of them Hispanic, and many of them lifelong Democrats, exchanged looks of dismay. A few expletives could be heard. Owens wasn't done. In fiscal year 2021, we apprehended nearly 260,000 people at the Del Rio sector. One sector, guys, one sector in Texas. That was more than the previous 9 fiscal years combined, Owens said. 9 years. This fiscal year, we have already in excess of 330,000 people apprehended in the sector. Last year was a record breaking. This year, we've already shattered it. Part of this can be attributed to the continued enforcement of Title 42, a COVID era policy that suspended asylum requests and authorized the automatic expulsion of single adult migrants who hailed from certain countries. Many of those migrants have been apprehended and expelled more than once, driving the number of crossings higher. Because of the known gaps in American immigration policy, Owen said many migrants in this area follow a trail to where they know Border Patrol will be waiting. Those who are allowed to stay in the U.S. because they are not a subject to expulsion or because they have a criminal record are typically processed, then detained or released with orders to appear at a future court date. Owen says it's the migrants who go out of their way not to get caught. He cited data from video monitoring suggests roughly 140,000 people have crossed unmolested in the sector in fiscal year 2022 who worry him the most. Of those 140,000 who got away, combined with the 330,000, makes for 470,000 illegal crossings from October through July in the Del Rio sector alone. There are 9 sectors along the southwest border. So let's just say let's just be conservative. 9 times 400,000. We'll round it down. We'll round it down. 400,000. 9 times 400,000. I'm gonna get a calculator. 9 times 400,000. Is that right? 3.6. Is it 3?
Yeah, because 10 times would be 4 million. So.
Oh my God. Okay. When he opened the meeting to questions, person after person demanded to know how could this be happening, who was to blame, and what could be done to punish the political actors responsible. How do you feel, Sarita Perales, an administrator from the local hospital, asked about the Biden open border policy? Owens fought a smirk. The administration will tell you that the border's not open, he replied, eliciting groans from the audience. Technically, the border's not open, but you wouldn't know that from spending a few days in Del Rio. People I spoke with down here said they've never seen anything like this mass humanity moving across the border since Biden became president. In fairness, apprehensions at the southern border began to rise in the spring of 2020 and continued to climb throughout Trump's final year as president. But the numbers spiked much higher after Biden took office. It's difficult to examine the policies of his administration, which, according to the left-leaning Migration Policy Institute, narrow the scope of immigration enforcement in the U.S. interior and adopted something of a new approach to border reinforcement, and dispute the conclusion that Democrats have made it easier for migrants to attempt to and complete an unlawful crossing into the U.S., making a historically bad problem much worse. Thoughts, guys?
I wouldn't doubt that, but it still doesn't excuse them for not expanding the legal mechanisms for people to cross. People are going to try to get across however they can. If you make it a bureaucratic mess, which is what it has been for a while, then they're just going to avoid it altogether. I mean, it's just practical. Who wouldn't? So it's up to the government to establish a working, efficient, effective way of people to apply for whatever status they're seeking. If we're not doing that, then you're going to have desperate people getting in however they can because they're going to prioritize the safety of their children or their family.
Well, and on to that point, I also wanted to mention, taking away the emotion out of this conversation, right? Let's talk numbers. We need immigration. We need immigration. As a country, our fertility rates have been declining. Our birth rates have been declining drastically since the 90s. So we need more people to replace the population in order to be able to pay the taxes that support our aging population. So take away all of the emotion and just talking numbers and, moving the economy forward. We need to have immigration. So it makes sense to have an immigration policy that does, allow for that and that does allow for the population to be replenished. But what happens is because we have no policy that, is realistic and fair, it's a free for all. It's the Wild West out there. And the people who are benefiting are the criminals who are taking advantage of all of these people, and it's just ridiculous because we're not paying attention to it. And I think whatever, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, whichever party decides to take control of this issue and actually solve it is going to be just heroic, I think, because this has been an issue for decades.
Jayne and Denai, I have a joke for you. What's the difference between dictators, communists, socialists, and democracies? The size of the planning committee.
I love it. Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Michael Gonzalez, for $5. Very nice, very nice. TZ Burton comes in for $5. My biggest problem with politicians is when they say this certain block of voters, air quotes, belong to us. Politicians need to earn our vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They forget that.
They forget real quick, but they, it's amazing what they remember. Thank you for that, guys. You all, let me see, what can we play for you guys? Let's play oh, you know what? I don't think Denai here was. Have you met my uncle yet?
I have not.
You're gonna.
That's a handsome dude there.
Yeah. One, two. This is exactly what Perales, a mother of four, feared would happen. Born in Mexico, Perales came here legally when she was 7 and became a naturalized citizen in 2017. Her first opportunity to vote in a presidential election was 2020. Wow, that's fantastic. She felt so disappointed with my choice.
So did everybody.
Perales grew up in Del Rio, a place with deep Democratic roots. She has progressive sensibilities on many social issues. She hated some of the hardline policies of the Trump administration, including the forced separation of families at the U.S.-Mexico border. But the more she listened to activists and elected officials on the left, the more worried she became that Democrats would embrace the other extreme, refusing to secure the borders at all. Perales ended up voting for Trump despite disagreeing with him and the Republican Party on a host of issues. She told me she plans to vote straight GOP in 2022. Wow. Because of the chaos Democrats have brought to her community. I mean, we can almost end the article on that, right? Where's the respect for our laws? Where's our respect for the people already here? Perales says, I'm an immigrant. I'm also an American. We're allowing our country to be overrun.
Well, I think the respect for the laws is because or is lacking, because a lot of them aren't working or they're poorly written, which again goes back to Congress.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Studies and polling suggest the Hispanics who entered the U.S. legally tend to be more conservative on questions of immigration. Some progressive Hispanics have bemoaned this, liking it to selfishly slamming shut a door behind you. But Alice insists that she doesn't feel threatened economically or otherwise by new immigrants. She understands the hopeless circumstances that drive so many people from impoverished and conflict-ridden countries to make the journey north. What worries her is a perception of crossing without consequences. She wants the U.S. to broadcast a stricter approach to immigration, not just for the sake of the rule of law and for the stability of her community, but also for the well being of those thinking of coming here. They're being treated so inhumanely, Perales says, of the migrants traveling to America. But it's the open border policies that's leading to that inhumane treatment.
I
I mean, on the
disagree.
whole, are they being treated inhumanely?
I think they are. But I think that has to do with
I
a
mean,
very
when they
poor
get here, they're
policy.
being treated inhumanely.
I think so, because a lot of times the courts are just overrun
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and they don't have enough staff to process the people quickly as they could. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why, in the comments, they were talking about the cages and stuff, Obama's cages or Trump's cages.
Mm,
Holding facilities are what we're talking about.
gotcha.
And these places shouldn't be overrun. They're supposed to be very temporary, but they're not because we don't have enough resources in immigration, in the Department of Immigration, to fully address the overwhelming demand that we have. And that falls on the people who are writing the laws and who are governing these departments. So it's they don't have to be treated inhumanely.
Sure.
It's just that that's what happens when you have a clogged up system. And frankly, you kind of see it in the expansive American criminal justice system. It's the same issue. It's a lot of bureaucracy, but not a lot of efficiency. And that's it shouldn't be that way.
Joe Frank Martinez, the sheriff of Valverde County, told me the same thing when I visited his office in Del Rio. A strong show of deterrence at the border, he says, is the decent thing to do. Not a week went by this summer. Martinez says that he and his deputies didn't discover a body of someone who was either drowned in the river or perished in heat. Shortly before my visit, he told me they recovered 4 corpses in the span of 3 days. I checked the weather app on my phone, 106 degrees outside. Like most sheriffs of this in South Texas, Martinez is a Democrat. But definitions are a funny thing down here. Many of the residents have ancestral roots in both Mexico and present-day Texas. They identify as Tejanos. In the same way Tejanos here won't identify with, say, Mexican Americans in Arizona, Democrats don't identify with Democrats just about anywhere else. Martinez is pro-life, pro-gun, generally conservative in ways that don't mesh with the modern Democratic Party. He
Yeah.
believes both parties deserve blame for failing to fix a broken immigration system and put something in place that can reasonably allow people to make a legal entry. But Martinez insisted this present crisis is one of his own party's making. Right now, these migrants feel like they've got a standing invitation from this administration to cross the border. He said, "This is all on Democrat. This is all on the. This is all on Biden's watch. All on the Democratic Party's watch right now. What's going on?" That's just my opinion. It wasn't long ago that Democrats ruled South Texas. Today, Martinez told me the Democratic strongholds in Del Rio aren't really Democratic anymore. Valverde County, which Democrats carried by an average of 8 points in the previous 3 presidential elections, went for Trump by 10 points in 2020. And here we go. The 23rd Congressional District, which covers Valverde, is held by a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Just weeks before I arrived in Del Rio, Mayra Flores, a Mexican-born Republican, flipped the 34th District, farther to the east in the Rio Grande Valley in a special election. A Democrat had carried the district by double digits in every election since it was redrawn after the 2010 consensus. The GO is favored to flip the neighboring 15th district next week and represent a majority of Texas border districts. Less than a decade ago, Democrats controlled every single one. Martinez said most of the Democrats he's known over the years have become skeptical of the party. For longer than he can remember he's had a weekly breakfast with the same group of 7 or 8 guys at the Ramada. They're always Democrats, all of them. Now he said there's only one holdout. The rest have switched sides. Wow. Whew. Anything, guys? Ladies?
No, I think it sums it up perfectly. This is the future. If Democrats don't come to terms with reality, they're going to continue to lose elections.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this article is so spot on and so well researched. I mean, hats off to the writer, because they really looked at quite a few different Latino points of view and not just like one. But yeah, the whatever you want to call it, crisis at the border situation, immigration problem. It's a huge deal right now, and the fact that it's being ignored is having, look at the impact that it's having. Lifelong Democrats, diehard Democrats are like, I don't think so anymore. I think I'm gonna go for the Republican candidate this time around. And I'm hearing it in so many places right now. This conversation is happening all over the country right now. So yeah,
well, and that's why we're doing this special stream, because honestly, the slant mainly talks about entertainment stuff. But this is so special, and the election is this Tuesday, so it's going to be fascinating in about a week what this conversation is going to be. Once we, the numbers are really analyzed and approved, I guess. Okay.
It seems like the politicians don't seem to get it together until they lose.
Right.
The parties don't listen until they lose. So it may just be time for them to lose.
Yeah. In the sheriff's view, and he's said it's part perception, part reality, his party's become too progressive for Hispanics in a community like this. This talk of defunding the police, it's had a real impact, Martinez said, describing the local Hispanic community as ardently pro-law enforcement. Meanwhile, he added, the moderates in this party at the state and national levels aren't doing enough to push back on the left. Over the past 3 years, Martinez estimated he's given tours of the border to more than 100 members of Congress. I haven't had a single Democrat here. Not one, he said. And trust me, I've invited them. Not long after we spoke, Martinez finally welcomed the first congressional Democrat, Darren Soto of Florida, to the border. So the Democrats, so these guys in Congress, these guys are not even doing their jobs, right? Except for one now. Oh, wait. Yeah. Hold on. Don't strike me yet. I'm almost done. In Los Angeles truck, we drove down a narrow road that runs parallel to a stretch of border fence started by George W. W. Continued under Obama, he was still seething. Progressives exploit the suffering at the southern border to raise money or to get booked on television shows, he said. But they won't actually come and see it for themselves. I asked him why. It's because it's a romanticized ideology, Lozano said. It's easy for them to romanticize this whole situation. They're struggling. They need help. They're coming here for a better life. It's harder for them to come look at the bodies of people who died in 170 degrees heat, kids who drowned, border patrol agents who are so opposed to trying to help pregnant mothers. None of this fits their narrative. Just crossing myself, guys.
But to me, that's the problem, is that if they actually cared about those things, then they would be trying to get those people processed instead of letting them die at the border or die in the heat or whatever, standing in line forever. There are ways of saying, okay, we have to recognize we have this many people who are trying to get citizenship or residency. What do we need to expand in the Department of Immigration? Again, this is their whole job to address this issue. What do we need to establish at the border, along the border, and in the administrative process itself to get these people through and get them in or get them back out, whatever we need to do on an individual basis? That's the question. And if you
And
really cared about their lives, you would be working on that.
and I get it. I get emotional, Denai, not just because these are Latinos, but because these are human beings, and that the boots on the ground are being ignored. I didn't know it to this extent. It's really heartbreaking. Like I'm like holding back, like I'm like really like just very emotional right now.
It's horrible. And, it's sad because I think people forget, it wasn't so long ago that, the enemy was the cartels in Mexico bringing all of the drugs over, right? Well, we legalized pot. And so guess what? That money that they were getting from all of the pot, they now decided to restructure, and they are now focusing on squeezing all of these people that are just trying to find, whether they're trying to find freedom or just trying to be able to feed their kids or themselves, people who are desperate, that are willing to go through all of this. The cartels have now moved their efforts to these people and to victimizing them further than what they are. So that's another thing that I think people are forgetting, is that the cartels are behind a lot of this suffering as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's terrible.
And who are they serving?
Devastating.
Who are they making their money off of? But that's a whole nother hole, black hole. I want to, so let's finish.
To be fair, though, I think that's the reason people have always come here, is because they're dealing with an oppressive regime or government or power that's making their life incredibly difficult or dangerous where they're coming from. That's the story of America.
I want to finish reading this segment, and then there's this article does go on. I will link the article to this video description, but I do want to wrap it up. But let's just continue here with Lozano. Is that okay with Jayne and Denai?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Absolutely.
I asked Lozano what he wants. Democrats to do about the border crisis. He laughed. Democrats refuse to even call it a crisis. They're gaslighting me, Lozano said. He ran through a list of requests: more funding for Border Patrol, better technology to monitor movement, more support for humanitarian groups on the ground, stricter processing policies to deter would-be migrants, and yes, in certain places, reinforce physical barriers. Above all, he wants Democrats to stop signaling that America has an open border. Throughout the 2020 Democratic presidential primary campaign, he noted the party's aspiring leaders took a host of positions on decriminalizing border crossings or providing health insurance to undocumented immigrants. That broke with decades of orthodox, how do you say that word?
Orthodoxy?
To appease the progressive base. I'm all about the American dream, but this is unsustainable, just totally unsustainable, Lozano said. Government is supposed to be about stability, but this party, my party, is inviting in all this instability. I've had enough. Lozano is no longer the mayor of Del Rio. This summer, just a few weeks before I came to town, he served his last day in office. Once a promising young prospect in the Democratic ranks, quit electoral politics, walking away from the job he loved. Now he's thinking about quitting the Democratic Party too. They go back to Arizona. Let's go to the end. Let's go maybe like the last couple paragraphs. What an article, man. Wow. What an article. We go back to Arizona, to the first people we were talking about, the Earls. In the corner booth, Earl and Mary Rose look distressed. This is in South Phoenix at their restaurant, El Portal, which my family lives right down the street from. Earl tells me in this kind of talk has been pervasive in his restaurant in his neighborhood since Biden took office. And now they're even hearing it at home. Two of Earl's grandsons voted for Trump in 2020. One of them, Earl says, got hooked by the pandemic era fights over public education policy and is now a Tucker Carlson devotee. The other, the other grandson, he says, is less dogmatic, but exasperated by the left's fixation on social justice. Mary Rose confesses to feeling a certain pessimism. She and Earl spent a generation building a community, organizing a vote, working to translate raw Hispanic numbers into real political influence. Yet they are confronting the same harsh realities today about power and patronage that they fretted over 23 years ago. Wins and losses are not the measure. Democrats should sweep Arizona statewide races against an impalatable bunch of Republicans this fall, but it won't quiet the feeling that the Wilcox's dreams are slipping away. They have so much of what they wanted: an engaged base, a hard-won 11 electoral votes, a Democrat in the White House, and so little to show for it. Maybe the best way we can hope for is that these voters, Mary Rose nods toward one of her adult grandsons nearby, becomes independents. We fight for them on a race-by-race basis, she says, and honestly, it's a win for Republicans. All right, there you have it. And like I said, we did jump to the end. This article is in the video description. It is incredible. And let's finish up. I think we had we're going to go over the voting results here, and then we'll get your final thoughts, guys. TZ Burton for $5. Thank you so much, TZ. Remember, voting is our civic duty, the easiest thing we can do to serve our country. Love you all. Vote Pedro.
Vote Pedro.
Oh, I love Pedro. Where's Pedro? Okay, so let me close the voting. Let's end the poll. 83 votes.
Ooh.
Very cool. Wow. Love it. 83 votes. Which party better stands for the policies, for the values and policies that Hispanics value? Republican, 61%. 31% neither. 7% Democratic.
Not shocking.
Yeah. Very scientific Latino poll. Okay, let's get your...
Media.
What's that?
I said, call the media. Tell CNN and Fox. They all have it wrong.
Let me tell you, you know, Denai, doing what you do on Clubhouse, you're hearing the real voices. We're connected to people, you know. Okay, so final thoughts. Let's get your final thoughts. Let's start with Denai.
I mean, this article, I wish everybody would read it. I wish, I wish the article and this conversation would be shared with as many people as possible, because it's so spot on. These are the conversations that are being had by people, not polls, not the media, not the think tanks, but the real people who, are affected by all of these issues. And I'm not at all surprised with the fact that this poll said that Republicans represent more of how Latinos think, as far as politics are concerned. And I mean, it's spot on. Latinos overall are more conservatives. And I will say it again, I think Latinos have more in common with Americans in the South and working class families than we really than we think, or than is put out there, than is perpetuated. So yeah.
Thank you. Where can people follow you at? I mean, what would you like me to promote here for you?
You can follow me on Twitter,
Yeah.
Danai.
I'm getting it right now. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite. I'm so glad that I was able to jump in. It's an amazing conversation. As usual, you always have great conversations. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Follow Deny. There it is, the info. I see a very spirited, if I can say, spirited talk in the chat. All I ask is keep it civil, keep it moving. We'll take it from there. Jayne,
Yes.
your final thoughts, my friend.
No, I think that was a fantastic article. I think it covers so many bases. It's something that Democrats in particular should probably go over with a fine-tooth comb to try to understand the complexity of voters as individuals and not just as these boxes they like to, well, both sides, I guess, like to put us into. But yeah, I think it highlights what we can expect going forward, at least in the near term with elections. Unfortunately, I don't think that the politicians are really going to get it. I mean, they will short term. If they lose, they'll throw more resources or money at the problem. But will they start to actually listen to people? Will they start to be a part of these and engage in these kinds of conversations? I think that's going to be the telling thing. But in the interim, I think the people are having these conversations, and that's what's most important.
Well, I want to thank you both ladies for being here, for jumping on. Their links are going to be in the video description of this. Deny, muchísimas gracias. And let's do a postmortem. Someone suggested that. I think that would be a great idea.
Oh, that would be good. That would be nice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, let's reconvene maybe in at least a week after everything gets approved.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, Biden's already warned it's going to take a couple days. Hey, don't be changing anything, Biden. All right, my friends. I want to thank everyone in the chat. I want to thank all the super chats, and every dollar goes a long way for this channel. And I actually have a new closing credits.
Ooh.
Roll call with all our members. Let me get that up and running. Jayne, what's the next thing where people can catch you on?
My Saturday streams. You can always catch me there at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. And otherwise, I'm on various streams. Follow me on Twitter, and you'll see my postings. I don't have a set schedule yet. Maybe someday.
Yeah, keep them guessing. That's why I was asking you, like, hey, let's do this. But then you were going live Sunday because I know it's not every Saturday. I mean,
yeah. Usually the last Saturday of the month I go out of town. So that one, nice. But the first 3. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, everybody. I want to thank my wonderful guests, Deny and Jayne Theory. I want to thank all you guys, the members of the channel, new subscribers. I saw some new subscribers in here, and you can look for new videos from me. This week we have a Latin jazz artist coming on Wednesday, and we're going to get to see some of his musical performances, but also he's doing a fundraiser for U.S. veterans, and that is a nice event that we're going to talk about. And then Thursday, I'm going to see Wakanda Forever. You will get my out of theater reaction. Oh my God. Much love to you all. If you are a member of the channel, you will see your name in the closing credits. Be well. Muchísimas gracias.
Bye.
Coming out, but I have my doubts that you realize.
weapons are to war. 'Cause all the
What's up,
words
RC
you're
fam?
having
I
no
see my
effect
brother
at all. It's a
from
funny
New
thing.
York. We didn't get the World Series matchup we wanted. Maybe next year.
Something has to happen to change the direction of it. What this do is causing
Look
you
at all those
more
wonderful
restriction. It's a silly thing. I say to myself, what a words for when no one listens anymore.
Yes, it's a real mustache. This is real.
When no one
Like 3 months of this.
knows nothing at all. Do you hear me?
It's my
Do
birthday.
you care?